Okay.
You're ready.
All right. So I hit this first?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 6:30. This is the board workshop being held on June the 16th of 2020. We have a quorum with all members, we have a quorum, but Mr. Hubenak is absent. And we will review the agenda items from the regular meeting from, doesn't have the date here.
It's
From May,
June 18th. Oh, we're reviewing the agenda items
for this
that's
week.
right.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
right.
for June 18th,
18th.
2020. If you'll take it away, Dr. Randall.
Thank you, Madam President. The first agenda item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the interagency program agreement between Lamar Consolidated Independent School District and the Behavior Treatment and Training Center, Texana Center for the 2020-2021 school year, and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreement.
I have a question. Will any of these students be participating at PowerPoint?
No, these are
Participating?
more severe.
Okay,
Only 11 kids from last year.
okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Miss Kaminsky, I forgot you were talking to me. I'm like, go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the interlocal program agreement between Lamar Consolidated Independent School District and Richmond State Supported Living Center for the 2020-2021 school year, and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreement.
I have a question. You can just stay back there. Now, this particular program, it's federal funded,
It's a state school, yes.
so we're not, it's not at a cost to us in any,
A portion of that is, yes.
and there's just very few, right?
One actually from last year, but they graduated in December, so we have 0 students that are participating here.
Okay, thank you.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the interlocal cooperative agreement with Equal Opportunity Schools in the amount of $102,000 for the 2020-2021 school year, and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreement.
So you're gonna talk, are you gonna speak?
We have a presentation, Madam President.
Oh, great.
Oh.
Madam President, board members, Dr. Randall, just kind of giving you an overview of Equal Opportunity School and EOS for some information. Just so you're aware, this is aligned to our strategic plan, as everything else is in the district. We look at our strategic plan when we make decisions. Part of the strategic plan is to equip students with knowledge and skills to succeed in an ever-changing world. And so part of these that EOS aligns to is ensuring Lamar CISD graduates have effective critical thinking, problem solving, and communication skills, as well as ensuring the curriculum equitably prepares students to achieve in their preferred career aspirations. And with EOS, this is truly for our college preparedness. And then also to increase students, families, and community members' awareness and access to all academic programs. Not only is it aligned to our strategic plan, it's also aligned to components of the state accountability system. Part of the state accountability system is truly with college career military readiness, and as you can see on the presentation, these are all the components that the state or the district and high schools earn credit for college career military readiness. With EOS, these are aligned to meeting the criteria of AP or IB exams for Lamar CISD, that's AP exams. It's also earning for college credits from dual credit courses, as well as completing an on-ramps course for college credit. Part of EOS is the mission statement of EOS is to ensure that all students have the opportunity to succeed in challenging high school courses with a focus on advanced placement. Now, Lamar CISD has pushed back a little bit on EOS to add into that, as well as dual credit, because we feel dual credit also allows for opportunities for our students to prepare for college. So why are we looking at AP courses and dual credit courses? Well, research kind of tells us some things that we want to look at. Students who took one or more AP exams, regardless of what they scored or the score that was earned, were more likely to graduate from college in 4 years compared to non-AP students. Also, research tells us that students who entered college with AP or dual credit dual credit both returned for their second year at a higher rate than students who entered with no college credit. So our work with EOS really focuses on the identification and enrollment of students. It helps our school leaders identify students who have attributes that are related to the success in advanced placement or dual credit courses. These attributes include their GPA, the test scores that come from STAR or STAR UC, as well as PSAT exams. It also looks at student survey indicators, such as AP interest. What courses are they interested in? What kind of content are they interested in? Their learning mindsets, which includes grit, determination, and their growth mindset, the ability to understand that with hard work and some practice, they can become better at a content area, as well as their career interests. We also then rely heavily on teacher recommendations for students. How are the students performing in those courses, and do the teachers believe that they would be successful in AP or dual credit? Now, with COVID that has happened, the recruitment that has happened throughout the year has kind of been halted a little bit, because we also understand what's going on with students at their homes. But our recruitment is going to continue throughout the summer as well as into next year, because as we look at data that I'll be showing you, we need to continue with this. The data then shows us, as you can see, what you're looking at right now are AP enrollments of our students based on sub-pops. If you look at the far right-hand corner, this is the 2020-21 course request. This is for next school year. Well, as you can see, we were on a trajectory with our gaps closing of our sub-pops, and then COVID hits, and all of a sudden we have a drop-off. With our work with EOS, we usually have 3 waves of outreach or recruitment. With COVID, we were only able to do 1. We continued working with EOS throughout the spring to plan how can we reach out to students but not push too far, as we know that their families and the students were under stress. That data is really seen here. This data shows her AP enrollment from fall of last year in blue compared to green, the request that we have for this upcoming school year. We have some work to do with outreach, and we're going to continue that work for the summer, and then also at the beginning of the school year of working with students to identify them for AP or dual credit courses. With some push with EOS, their system has now allowed us to look at students who are enrolled in both AP and dual credit courses with some of our bar charts. What you see here is in the blue, students who are taking just AP courses. In the green, students who are enrolled in both AP and dual credit courses. And then the yellow shows students who are just in dual credit courses. And we still have some gaps that we're looking at, but we do see some positives of our students enrolling in these courses. So as we look at performance on AP as well, as you notice, if you look at starting about 2014, you can see for Lamar CISD, the total number of AP exams began to increase very quickly. But we also then noticed that our scores were not keeping on the same pace. This past year, we implemented an AP PLC, which is a professional learning community, where we brought AP teachers together by content, focused on depth and complexity, aligning their instruction to AP exams, reviewing past exam data to ensure where do we need to focus, as well as resources that the College Board has available so that teachers can utilize those in the classroom. We're hoping to see what happens this year with AP exams, but of course our AP exams were held at home on our students, and so we really don't know how that's going to end up with our students taking those AP exams remotely at home. We talked about why AP and dual credit are such a great thing for students to be prepared for college, but it also can come at a savings for our students. This estimate shows that with the number of students who hit the requirement of a 3 or higher on an AP exam, if we looked at what that would entail on a cost savings for our students, for the 2019 school year, the exams would be about $2.1 million in savings. This does not include the savings of students who took dual credit and earned college credit through those courses. From the data that you just looked at, the bar charts, the line graphs, that all comes from the EOS portal. And so this comes with an agreement with EOS for the data usage. They use it with a third-party vendor to ensure that they can create these graphs and charts for the district as well as campus-based. They also can share with educational partners for research only with district consent, and all of these entities are under FERPA compliance. For next year, what we're looking at for planning with EOS is the EOS site visits would be once a semester to work with our campus level teams on sustainability of a trainer model, where we're looking to work with administrators and teachers to focus on student belonging in AP courses. Many of our students who are first year AP takers, we need to work to build relationships so that they feel part of those communities of AP courses, as well as high yield strategies for our teachers to utilize in the classroom. But we will also continue working on data analysis. Our Director of College and Career Readiness, Ms. Lindsay Troutman, will be doing monthly visits to our campus to use the data that is provided to help them make decisions and action plans to do outreach for students who would be great candidates for AP or dual credit courses. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to two of our principals actually. We're going to begin with Dr. Kay Williams from Lamar CISD to talk about EOS at her campus.
Good evening. I wanted to talk about EOS and what it's done for our students at Lamar Consolidated High School. And so it's really provided a lot of supports for our students and also for our teachers as well. So what we can do is we're able to identify a lot of students looking at the whole child through different surveys that EOS provides us, and we're able to see what kids have the different mindsets and growth sets needed to be successful in AP and dual credit courses, and then we're able to recruit them. It's really helped us tremendously as far as getting kids into those upper level courses, kids who never thought that they belonged in those classes before. So not this year, but the prior year before COVID, we had a total of 903 students, 903 tests taken, AP tests taken on our campus. That was a 300% increase in what we had the year before. And that was basically because we were able to recruit kids, get kids into AP courses, and then we were able to build systems in place that help support them. And so we were able to look at insight cards. And so when we came back in the January of our semester, we handed insight cards out to all of our teachers. And we gave them insight cards where students had identified them as a teacher that they trusted, as one of their trusted adults, had done something for them or made them feel very special about something. And so the teachers were able to see what kids had said some nice things about them, and they were able to go out and recruit those students to come on into those AP courses. So it really helped build those relationships between students and teachers, and it also showed teachers where were kids struggling, why did they think that they maybe couldn't take that class, and they really helped them build confidence in themselves to be able to go and take those courses and be successful and feel like they belonged in those classes. We also helped us maintain rigor and increase our rigor at our campus, and that showed in our overall results of our data in our EOCs, what kids scored on SATs, and a lot of that has come from having kids in AP courses where there is that rigor and you can sustain the rigor in there and getting kids to really stretch their learning, and so that was very important for us. We also built an AP ambassador program, and I think that was the most powerful tool that EOS helps provide the support to that. And basically that's where our AP students help recruit first-time students into AP, and then they become a mentor for those students. So during our Mustang time, once a week, those students would meet with the AP kids, and they had study hall sessions. We also did Kids Teaching Kids on Mondays after school, run by our AP kids, and it was all through the kids getting training through the EOS and being able to be mentors and provide academic supports for kids just like them and help those kids feel like there's a sense of belonging. And of course that carries on over into the summertime where we have our AP camp, and that's where EOS has really helped us build capacity with our teachers because they're able to provide training for our teachers to really focus on mindsets of kids and how do you get kids to learn, using those different dimensions and not just looking at, standardized test scores, but looking at the whole child. And then we do cross-curricular teaching, and I'll tell you that's the most powerful tool EOS has given our teachers because I have a lot of young teachers that I can recruit into teaching AP courses, and they're able to work with some of our, I call them master teachers, our teachers who have done very well in AP courses before, and they get to work together cross-curricular, and it really builds capacity with our teachers. And then our incoming students get to have a sense of belonging because they enter into high school being part of this camp and they know kids already. So when they walk into the classroom, they don't feel like they're by themselves. When they're having issues or problems, they can go to those AP ambassadors and they can really focus on, staying the course in an AP class because it can be very challenging for our students and they don't have some of the supports at home, but we make sure that they get them through school. So EOS has provided a lot of supports for our teachers, for our students, and the administration as well, and really providing a well-rounded AP program at Lamar Consolidated High School.
Thank you.
Good evening. I don't know how I'm going to follow that because I've been at George Ranch for about 4 months before COVID hit into that. So EOS was something new to me. Can we go? Oh, I have the clicker. I can use a clicker. Was new to me. I really didn't know a lot about it. This has been the first year into it, so if you're just learning about it, you kind of will feel what I felt at the beginning of that. Some of the things that were really important, and Dr. Williams did a great job of talking about those insight cards. At the beginning of the year, we did an activity with our character counts and talking about invisible kids. And so we did this, we lined all of our kids up into, all of our seniors actually into the cafeteria, went around and had everybody sign off if they've had interaction with that kiddo. And then we went back and we took those kids' names that did not have any interaction and we cross-referenced some of these kiddos to see where are we missing kids. So this kind of went hand in hand, and so when you had these insight cards, it gave you, it was a bump for the teachers because we made it, we brought the teachers in and said, you've been chosen. Like it was really important because these kids have chosen these adults as their safe and trusted adult, which I think is really good when you're talking about staff buy-in and the talking points. With that, we have AP teacher ambassadors that are advocating for kids. And they're the teachers that, and I have a couple of things. I brought my phone up here not because I was texting Dr. Randall, but because I actually had some of the kids' words. So they write essays, and I think you need to hear from kids because that's why we're all really here. And so we have teacher ambassadors, and some of the teacher ambassadors, you'll hear the kids talk about those teachers, which I think that's really important to show how trusted they are. AP student ambassadors, Dr. Williams talked about that. They talk about their stories and building connections. So this is a story from one of my AP ambassadors that they gave during the summer camp last year. So in an informational meeting we held, she explained the prospective EOS 2021 students that her parents did not attend college and didn't really talk to her about college, so she didn't know what AP classes were about. When she was identified as a freshman by Ms. Wilkening, it's one of the teachers that we have who just retired, I'm going to chase her down, she agreed to take her first AP class and was shocked that she did so well. So much so that in her junior year, she went to 4 AP classes and made A's and B's. She is now in the top 10% of her incoming senior class and planning to attend medical school. So that's just in the kids' words, what impacted them. Also, another story is also from an NHS scholarship essay, which is also one of our EOS kiddos that wrote this. She said she was surprised and flattered that a teacher approached her to take an AP class her sophomore year. After talking with the teacher, she agreed to take APUSH in 10th grade. She was the only Hispanic female in the class, and she felt she didn't belong in there. But the teacher grouped her with 3 other white girls, and they quickly became friends in class and formed a study group outside of class. She said that this experience taught her that she can excel and that sometimes feeling as an outsider is just something she has to overcome and prove that she belongs, which I think is pretty powerful for a kiddo. Looking ahead, the summer camp was something new. That's where I kind of got indoctrinated into EOS. We went down there and played games with the kids. So that was my first interaction with my kids, and I brought my counselors in there, and we played games and bonded with them so that they would have that connection to the adults in the building and have that support. So looking ahead, these were some of the things that Dr. Maxwell, when they came and did their site visits with us, things that we wanted to do a little more training on how to reach those kiddos. Collaboration with other campuses. Dr. Williams has Julie McCain over at her campus, and she's been an amazing support to help our teachers and administrators work through that. And then planning a non-traditional camp because we don't know what 2021 is going to look like exactly. And then student testimonials, like from the trenches, like that. When you hear from students, that's where it really, really drives it home. But something that I felt was really important that I talked to Dr. Maxwell about when he came to our campus was, it's great that we get kids in and we recruit them in, but how are we supporting them once we get them in there? So it has to have sustainability. It has to have something that we're working throughout the year to continue supporting them when the going gets tough, because AP classes are hard. I know from my own child's experience. Thank you.
Any questions?
So when the going gets tough, how does the EOS program and not Lamar CISD staff help those kids sustain that?
So as we work through with EOS, they give us ideas of how to help students feel involved, engaged, and how do we help personalize the academics for the students? How do we make a personal connection for those students to that content area to really ensure that these students feel belonging in the classroom, and also giving us strategies to use with our teachers in those classrooms to help support those students for success. We are continuously monitoring students. They help us with this idea of how are our students continuing through, as you heard, planning all the way through the year, not just getting them in, but having those supports in place for our students.
So it sounds like they help to train the staff as much as the kids, or identify the kids, and they help train the staff.
Part of the model is identification, but part of the model is also supporting our educators to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our diverse students.
Anyone else have questions?
I'm trying to understand, when we first, for some reason, I found the 2018, when we first initiated this program. And it was my understanding it was a 2-year contract. Is that correct? This is going to be the second contract with this group?
Did this start in 2015?
15.
2015.
This is a
Okay.
2-year contract, though.
But this,
Right.
it started in 2015. And we've renewed the contract. I think that this is the third time. I have to go back and look at the numbers. And what this contract is going to do is that, and you probably noticed that we're also phasing. And the staff, they've hired Lindsay Trotman, who is working with them in an effort to begin to create more of the ability of LCISD to take the ball and run with it later. A lot of the work that is being done is proprietary, and we're working with them to kind of begin to shift from that. Now, I hope I did justice to that.
You did.
That on page 45, where it says, the first was to sustain equity, and then the second part was extend equity. And for some reason, I had down that the first phase was to sustain the equity. I was looking at the cost, and also at how long was this going to last? Because my understanding was they were going to be training everybody in our district, and then eventually they would phase out. But I couldn't find a date of what is their goal. When do they think we can phase their portion out?
I can speak to that. And
Okay.
so when we began to look at, Lindsay actually began for us, our Director of College and Career Readiness. Last year, we came forward and said that we were hiring a Director of College and Career Readiness. Lindsay Troutman did arrive here from another state, and we are so blessed to have her. And so we are able to build capacity for our college and career readiness and a focus on the work that we've currently been doing. And so she has been working closely with EOS, reviewing the data, meeting with the equity teams with the plan for us to begin a gradual release. We are still utilizing the tools. So what you will see is a gradual release the next couple of years as we pull away and then begin to utilize our own staff.
So we're looking at another 2-3 years, is what you're saying?
No, ma'am. Right now, as we look at the first phase, if you can see that, the proprietary tools for the high schools that help us provide the insight cards and the data analysis, that is proprietary to EOS, and so we're purchasing currently right now the tools. And then we have 2 consultants where we used to have 4 times a year they would come. We are moving that only to once each semester. And then our schools, as we begin to go into the next phase next year, they will be working still closely together to continue to monitor that we're looking for underrepresented kids to begin to put in, to participate in these classes. And so this is a 2-year phase that we actually began last year when we began to hire our director who is supervising, working with Dr. Maxwell and myself in the 6th through 12th Advanced Studies program. And then we have Valerie Anderson that is working with our K through 5. And so that was our long-range plan for advanced studies for Lamar CISD.
Okay. Then, there was something else I vaguely remember conversations about. It says, the contract, this is back from 2018. This agreement shall be effective on the date, it shall terminate on August 31st, 2019, with the exception of the subsequent activities through December 1st, 2029.
Within the
What-
contract, I'm going to let Dr.
What
Maxwell
is
speak to that.
subsequent activities? If we're going to, no, it sounded like we were going to have this group till 2029.
No, that has to do with the data analysis that would continue moving forward.
It also, it also pertains to data as in how do they dispose of data and how do they ensure that they don't keep forever the information from our district. And so that's,
Because I was trying to remember the conversation that,
It's for the purpose of longitudinal data, to see a trend over a series amount of time so that they can continue to monitor the effectiveness.
okay. And the workshops, there is going to provide a 4 full-day workshop for our leaders. Has that been done yet, or is that something that they're adding to this contract?
that's another phase. As we're looking through this, remember, as Dr. Mosich mentioned, for this year, our plan would be to have one site visit in the first semester and one site visit in the second semester. And when they do these, as you spoke about, those trainings, we can do those virtually as well because we're trying to reduce costs as for travel. And so we have not done those when we do the collaborative all the way through. We've done site visits with our EOS person, but that is in phase 4 as we go through that planning towards that action. But we'll do one site visit for each of our campuses first semester and one site visit for second semester for all of our campuses.
So I'm understanding this contract's going to be for 2 years then, is what we're approving?
That is what we're recommending
Okay.
for approval, yes.
I don't know if this is correct or at the right time, but I noticed we have another program we're going to be studying. And it's similar when I read it, so I was wondering if we're overlapping on,
Are you referring to SchoolLink?
yes.
SchoolLink is a tool that we have another presentation on, but it is going to take the place of Zello and Naviance that we have had so that we have one program beginning in 6th grade all the way till student's senior year. And so we just went through an RFP process with that, and that's what we will be presenting. But it is not the same type of program.
But the goal is the same.
No, the goal is, again, that's for all of our kids. And again, I want to do that program justice, but it is a tool that we would utilize to begin to evaluate student aspirations, where they want to go to college, scholarship information, how to build a resume, put your GPA in there and see what kind of colleges you're interested in, volunteer hours. It will be a tracker for us as well within CCMR accountability. And so that is a tool that we utilize, but EOS is separate from that. That is a program that we use and tools we use to identify underrepresented kids that would be a candidate for participating in an advanced class, whether that is advanced placement and or dual credit.
And that is a 5-year contract, correct?
Correct. The recommendation is 5 years, yes.
The recommendation is 5 years at that $122,000
For the first year, yes.
Right.
I have some questions. Does anybody else have questions?
I thought you were, Catherine, I thought you were talking about the on-ramps, the next item, but you're talking about school links. When you said there's another similar program on the agenda, is that right?
Right, it's on page 94.
Gotcha. All right.
Considering approval of college and career readiness.
Gotcha.
And this program sounds like we're doing the same thing, we're keeping records. So I was trying to understand why we're doing 2 programs that are similar, and the cost is the same, about the same. Too much reading.
is a lot. Okay, if anybody else have any? Okay, I have some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you'll flip to page 51 with me, where it talks about phase 3 extended equity. I just want to kind of go down the list, starting with the first, on the chart on the bottom, where it says student survey, and staff recommendations. So kind of one by one, I just wanted to talk about with each row. Can we do this on our own already, this piece of it? So we've done it for 5 years, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And the data analysis and the tools that are identified within this document are proprietary to EOS. And we do not have currently right now those tools available for us to begin to implement for the 2021 school year.
Okay, how about the next item, the APIB student experience survey and report?
All of these currently right now are the proprietary EOS tools.
So basically, we couldn't do this on our own.
Currently not.
We don't know how to create something like in-house that would be comparable to this?
I can't say officially no, but no at this time. We're recommending for 2 years.
In-house, though? If we didn't have this service, is it possible for us to create something that's comparable to this survey that they send out, that we give to the parents and the students every year?
To begin to implement in 2021, I do not believe so.
So even though we've seen the survey and the report each year, we still couldn't put something comparable together?
We can come up with data sets to kind of guide our decisions, but the tools in which we are accustomed to, no, not exactly. But are we going to be able to provide a survey to our students and to our parents? Yes.
Okay, so
And then experiences and surveys, we can do that. It would just not be in the platform of EOS.
Okay. How about the next one, the Equity Pathways Report? Is that something, it's an analysis of the student and staff survey responses, so we could do something like that in-house?
We could, but understand that the staffing that we have in research assessment accountability is limited. And so with the number of staff members that we have and how much data is crunched here, and going back to the survey, the validity and reliability of the survey takes a long time and a lot of work to ensure that those are accurate. That's the concerns we would have. Could we do it? Yes. How much time would that take? I can't tell you right now, especially with the staff that we have in research assessment accountability.
Okay. So are you able to provide us with how long that would take if you put something together?
We would have to go back, yes.
Okay. And then how about the Support and Belonging Report, which provides schools concrete recommendation for building belonging-rich policies and practices that lead to their success? Is this something that we've seen year after year from them?
Correct. And so when you look at, I want to be clear on a lot of these reports, that is what is exactly kind of guiding our site meetings in regard to looking at the data analysis and the responding to the data analysis. And so it would take some time for us to create individual reports. And then I think our disconnect would be the portal system where all of this information is being uploaded to spit out in a various format.
So are we going to have to create something like that on our own once we don't utilize this company?
Yes, ma'am.
So eventually we have to create it anyways?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then how about the next one, the student insight cards? I know both principals talked about that. So that's something we could create in-house as well. We know what they look like and what they consist of.
It is possible.
Okay. Next, outreach lists. So because these are for 10th and 11th graders, we've already identified who these students are, correct? So we could do these with counselors' help or someone, we could do these outreach lists ourselves in-house?
Correct. It would not be provided to us by EOS.
Okay. Next one, the outreach and enrollment tracking allows schools to execute against and track outreach activities that lead to equitable enrollment. Is this something that we could also provide in-house, we could produce?
It is possible.
Okay. And then the course registration enrollment updates, is that something that we could provide in-house?
There is a possibility, again, with available staff.
Okay. And then the evaluation tools, the visuals and the charts and the analysis showing their enrollment information, we would know who's enrolled. We could provide this in-house?
Correct. We would have that information.
Okay. And then semester AP IB grade analysis, is that something we could provide in-house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, the AP and IB exam analysis, is that something we could provide as well?
Yes, AP.
Okay. And then, a couple more questions. So some of the things that were shown on the screen from Ms. Williams or Dr. Williams and Ms. Patterson, the teacher ambassadors and the student ambassadors, are these things that we have a good feel of and we could do these on our own? We don't require EOS to walk us through these anymore?
Yes, ma'am. We are at a position.
Okay. And then the AP camp, is that comes out of a separate budget? That's not included in this budget, correct?
Correct.
So we're paying for that already, and it's our teachers and staff that go on the AP camp, correct?
Yes.
So we could continue with that
Yes.
in-house, okay. And then when y'all mentioned that it's continuing this summer, how is it continuing this summer? Is that contingent on approving these extended 2 years, or that's already going to happen this summer?
I think, I'm not going to speak for John, but I'm thinking from the outreach analysis that we still have kids that have been identified that have not been enrolled. And so there is still work with high school campuses on identifying those kids and determining their interest in getting into the classes.
That's in-house, or that's only if we sign up with EOS, we can't identify them without it, you're saying?
The data that they've already provided is the
We already
list
have
that they're,
information?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we already have it, okay. And then the APPLC in-house, so that also is in-house. I mean, so we've got that, that's something we do on our own, the PLC?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm good.
Just a,
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments regarding that. The staff was very quick to say, yes, we can. But there's going to be a cost associated with that.
Yes.
The amount of staff that would be required, the expertise to be able to do that. You're talking about a significant investment on the part of the school district. It's just like anything else. You outsource some things because that group has the capability, they're cranking it out for multiple districts, those types of things. And yes, we could, but I also think that Brian Moore would have to be involved in giving you an estimate of what it would cost. Because I think what you would find is that it would be a significant increase in the cost for us to do that in-house.
So we're willing right now to spend approximately $200,000 for this. So maybe we could get a comparable analysis of, because we already have Miss Troutman that we've hired for this,
No, not for just this purpose.
but she's already working on it.
Yeah,
And then we
she-
have Miss Anderson as well.
She is in the GT for elementary.
Okay, so what were you mentioning? And then who is the third person that y'all mentioned that is helping with this?
Lindsay Troutman is the Director of College and Career Readiness that just came on board in January, February of this past year. And among her duties are advanced studies. EOS is a portion of that, but it's also kind of the dual credit implementation as well as in working with our middle school in the 6th through 9th grade or 6th through 8th grade when we start looking at our pre-AP programs as well. It's not just going to be EOS.
We had Valerie Anderson, who was over all of this, GT and all. We brought in Troutman, split the responsibility. Troutman is going to be focused more on this aspect of it, whereas Ms. Anderson is focusing more on the GT side and the lower group.
And EOS has already been working with Troutman on preparations.
Since January, February, she has been working with them and with Dr. Maxwell in our schools.
Okay.
Yes. And then we have Susan, who is part of the GT coordinator that will begin also working with our 6th through 8th grade at the middle school level.
Susan's her last name?
Mm-hmm. First name. Susan is her first name. Dines.
What is it?
Dines.
Dines, thank you. I forget to look into, lean in, sorry, I apologize. Okay, she is 6 or 8.
I do have a question if I could. The cost is going down because of the 2-year contract or because of the services that we are doing more in-house and working with them more as a partner?
We received the discounted rate for going with a 2-year contract. Okay, that was, and it's articulated within the agreement. But we are doing a gradual release of the consultant coming to do the trainings so that we can plan in the next couple of years that gradual release to begin to implement the work moving forward with majority, well, all of the responsibility of the work to continue amongst LCISD staff members.
So with this contract, you see in 2 years even a further reduction? Or do you see eventually us phasing us away from them so we do most of this ourselves?
It
Or
will
we
depend
still
upon
need
the
some
data.
Data work with them, correct?
The data analysis component for EOS, it is $16,500 for each high school for the data analysis portion for their proprietary model. And it is a price, but it is bringing it into a certain portal. They already have the programming in line. And so though you're looking at that as a cost at this high school, this high school, this high school, you have to look at that particular price times 5 and then soon times 6. And is that going to be a full-time person that would also be implementing and programming for technology and then research and development? And so right now, our preference is utilizing the proprietary model so that we can continue the work forward with the data, with the staff that we currently have.
So you weigh one from the other. One way or another, you're going to spend money if you try to continue this problem.
Yes, that is exactly what we're saying. And again, it's the data tools are for each high school moving forward. And then again, every meeting that we've had, we react to the data analysis, and the teachers are engaged in that, and the administrators are engaged in that. When you go into the second year and they continue to utilize the program, then you will also begin continuing that PLC where these site teams will come together, and then different even regions to continue the work of identifying underrepresented kids, but it would not be dependent upon EOS consultants coming in.
So that's where we're saving the money.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We've got to remember, we have another high school
Right.
that's going to be
Exactly.
charged up. I have a
But it's
question,
in-
one more, or just on page 53, where it says Action for Equity, Phase 4. Page 53? On page 53, it says, what I'm trying to understand is how long are we going to be continuing with this program? At what point do we learn enough that we can have our own people doing this, if we get all this information? But it says this pathway is designed for clients, us, who are prepared to take nearly full ownership of the process for achieving equitable AP/IB participation outcomes. So it sounds like to me, they're not looking for an end of getting out, because they're saying that they're preparing us to nearly have full ownership. So I'm kind of hesitant as to, are we going to be going through till 2029, working with them?
That would not be our intention.
Okay.
When we begin to look at, I think last year we presented that the average EOS contract or services are in a 4 to 6 year period. And so as we look at this 2-year period, it does provide us the opportunity to continue utilizing the tools and then have a gradual release of the staff members from EOS working with our kids, not our kids, but working with our adults on the campus, as well as Lindsay beginning to also take a greater leadership role in that. When you combine that with the technology piece and the programs, and again, as Dr. Randall said, yes, are these things possible? Well, absolutely, they might be possible. However, it is going to require people, and it is going to require an investment of money. And currently, right now, we do have the tools that are identifying our kids to allow us to react to that quickly. to serve more kids and find more underrepresented kids to participate in our advanced studies track.
Question kind of related to topic. So it seems like we've done a really good job over the last few years of getting more students in those subpopulations that Dr. Maxwell showed us into AP programs. But then it also looks like maybe the next step is we need to figure out how we can better support those students so that they're passing the AP classes.
Yes.
So my question is, a few months ago, I requested, and I appreciate you providing some of the class sizes of the pre-AP classes and the AP classes. And some of them were 35, 36, 37, 38 students in a class. To me, it seems like maybe one of the ways that we could improve achievement would be lowering the student-teacher ratio. And so I wanted to see if you think that that would be beneficial, and if it would, what are some of the impediments to lowering the student-to-teacher ratio?
Well, before we go into, there's multiple factors on lowering the teacher ratio, teacher to student ratio, and part of that is the master scheduling. And so from each principal, one of the things that we're committed to in moving into next year is to ensure a careful review of those master schedules to ensure that we do not have that we're doing everything we possibly can to not have 1 to 42 or 1 to 37 within a classroom. And so every principal who's identifying a master schedule and assigning teachers to teach these different areas, they have a little bit of control on that. And that is something that as we go into 2021 and the master schedules are getting complete, something that we are monitoring. There's no guarantee when you look at lower class sizes equating to higher improvement. And so there's not necessarily a direct correlation to that. But I can understand the need for us to monitor that to ensure, because that can be a lot for one teacher, and we do understand that.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Madam President, the next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the cooperative agreement and data sharing agreement with University of Texas at Austin for the Own Ramps program with Lamar Consolidated Independent School District.
Do you have a question? Maybe just because I'm not familiar. There's no early childhood education or offered on these courses?
No, ma'am. Those are secondary advanced studies classes that are offered at the high school level through a partnership with the University of Texas.
Okay. And then the other, at one time we had a partnership with Lone Star College. Do we still have that?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Okay. That's dual credit?
Yes.
Dual credit partnership.
These are dual enrollment programs.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the memorandum of understanding between the Houston Galveston Institute and Lamar Consolidated Independent School District to provide mental health services for students and families beginning September 1, 2020 through August 31, 2021.
I have a question. Anybody else? No one else? Good. I was looking about counselors that are available under the grant. And we're always talking about counselors. Do we have enough? Don't have enough? I figured it, what is a counselor, what can they do in 2.5 hours on a campus, basically?
So, for our therapists, And that's what this counseling, so HGI
Okay.
are licensed clinicians, so not school counselors.
Okay, they're
And so,
licensed. Okay.
yes, ma'am. And so depending on the needs of the students, depends on how long they may be in session with the student. A lot of our therapists also provide what I call touch points during the day. So let's say I see a student for 25 minutes on a Monday, and we've been working on some things, and I just need a touch point on a Thursday or a Friday to where I see that student in the hallway and I say hello and just that eye contact and how are you doing, and that student keeps on track. So it varies from sitting for several minutes with a student to just touch points. So there's not a nice, neat answer to that. It just depends.
Okay. In the high schools, I just put down, so I need an explanation. The therapeutic services provided will consist of a hybrid format of telecounseling.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it has really been successful where a therapist meets with, and y'all are so spread out, I'm so sorry, Mr. Welch, I'm over here, I apologize.
I'm used to being on the end of the Just look that way.
I just want to acknowledge, I'm so sorry. That they meet with the student face-to-face to establish that relationship and understand what the process is going to look like. And then for up to three more counseling sessions, it's actually virtual teletherapy, much like we're doing telemedicine now in the land of COVID. But they are in a secure room with a secure platform where they meet with that therapist virtually, and then the next time around, they have that touch point with the counselor face-to-face as an opportunity. So that's the hybrid.
And then it also says that this is available to the teachers. I think I asked before, how many teachers actually use this service, or administrative staff, or are they aware where they can go?
Yes, ma'am. So it's not in lieu of an EAP, so our employee assistance program that we have through HR. But if we find staff that are in a difficult situation and there's a therapist on site, we're able to have that initial gathering to see what next steps would be available. To date, last year we had 20 faculty that took advantage across our district of having that immediate resource right there to help them get to that next place of support.
First day of school this year?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else?
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees ratify the financial and investment reports.
I have a question, but I'm not understanding, so I think I'll just wait till it's private. I wanted to know what was prepaid, 141, on page 89.
141, that's the, oh, at the bottom?
Okay, so the short answer is that's our property casualty insurance.
Okay.
We pay it once a year. It's about $1.6 million, and so we expense 3 months of it to the current year, 1920, and then 9 months to the 2021 year. And so the prepaid piece is the 2021 year.
Thanks, Jim.
Anyone else? Any questions?
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve School Links Incorporated to provide a web-based college and career readiness platform for grades 6 through 12 at a first-year cost of $122,500. Did I skip one?
The bank is,
I guess I'm ready to move. Lindsay, if you'll hold for just 1 second, I do
Me too.
apologize.
page 92.
We get a chance to do it again. We ask that the Board of Trustees
More clear this time.
consider approval of budget amendment request. I do apologize.
I have a question. Okay, anybody else?
What?
On the request for the mascot change, Who makes that decision as to who made the change in the mascot? Is that up to the principal or to the campus?
The board actually, it came to the board.
The board did?
Remember,
Yes.
they all
the-
wanted to be the same thing. George Junior High, Navarro, and Terry High School.
And that's
Yeah,
right.
I
And
think
what,
some parents probably didn't, I didn't.
We did that last year or year before.
it's been, I
So
think
this
a
is,
couple of
this
years.
is the one that was just changed?
And what this is doing is allowing them to make, Jill, I'll let you all talk. I'm sorry, I
But,
don't want to take
you know,
your.
the Lamar's all the same.
I just had the one comment. George Junior High is working with the Support Services Department in order to get the Gators switched to the new mascot. The actual building is being painted, so this is a really good opportunity
Okay,
and
so
time for
now
them
it's
to.
being done.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're switching all the designs to the new mascot.
Okay, we're just a little behind on getting it set up.
Yes, like I say, the building is actually being painted now, so it's a good time to refresh everything at the same time. So they wanted to do their wraps.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
With all the track behind the stage.
Well, I had some parents, like, why was it not done, and now it's being done, didn't have an answer.
Now, we ask that the Board of Trustees consider approval no, I'm moving ahead again. Let me back up. I'm sorry. That the Board of Trustees approve School Link Incorporated to provide a web-based college and career readiness platform for grades 6 through 12 at a first-year cost of $122,500.
Thank you. Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Randall, I'm really excited to be here to get to discuss the RFP Committee's proposal and recommendation for a CCMR platform. If you weren't aware, I saw some of you at Parent Nights this year, but we are replacing Zello and Naviance. Zello had been 6 through 8 and Naviance 9 through 12, and so really looking to streamline a college career military readiness platform to support our students as they move through and excel towards their post-secondary goals. I want to do my first shout out as a big thank you to all of the RFP committee members who spent countless hours reading piles of documents and also time in Zooms hearing presentations. This is all the way from parents and teachers, counselors, CCFs, directors, so everyone on the team that came together to really try to give feedback to what's best for our students and all of our stakeholders. We really centered our mission in this is that a goal of secondary education, unlike it was when I was graduating, is not just like, woo, I did it, pass through the stage, but to have a successful plan for post-secondary education and to have goals set and accomplish those along the way so that when you exit into that world that it's not happenstance that you are successful. So we centered our goals in that, and our rubric really focused on the student experience, the stakeholder experience, but also, as we have learned in the age of COVID, technical capabilities is very important. So I'm going to try to weave those in throughout, but really focusing on our student and stakeholder experiences. It came up time and time again in our committee that what we really loved about School Links is that it's so student-centered. The student really is the driver of where they want to go, and it starts with self-realization, focus and surveys on personality and interest and goals and courses that they enjoy. And that came up time and time again, all the way from, and some of us showed our age in the committee with the swipe left or right, we giggled a little, but the functionality of students to use these in engaging short experiences, max 15 minutes for tasks and surveys that can be taken time and time again. I don't know if any of us ended up being what we decided in 6th grade, but the program will grow with them. They can adjust and make those plans based on how their ideas change through time. And as it comes to careers, majors, colleges, personalities, strengths, and mindsets. So especially when we're talking about when you're trying that first rigorous course, where's your mindset right now? With those profile interests and skills guided by the student, it helps them develop career clusters, jobs that they probably haven't heard about and jobs that we didn't even know were created and that are constantly being created. Matches them with majors that will help them get there and how they need to plan for the institutions that they're going to attend, whether vocational, 2-year, 4-year, military, to accomplish those goals. College and career exploitation then peaks from that. This system grows with them, which is the robustness of it. 6 through 12, it's going to give them job-friendly language at the grade level that they're at, and to prep them for where they need to go, especially when we're thinking about planning for scholarships and endorsements and how that will grow with them through time. School lists, it links to a national database for scholarships, so our students will always be in touch with opportunities for financial assistance, but we can also load our own scholarship opportunities that are local as well. For CTE, certificate tracking, and noting that the certificates that are set by the state, we preload into the system and can make sure that our students are meeting those goals and track when they've accomplished those certificates along the way. I think we also showed our life in the committee when we chuckled at Game of Life. I was the little cars, we talked for a minute. But what's really great about this is it really focuses on financial literacy. And I can't think of a better time of the impacts that can come to you subtly financially. So this Game of Life allows students to play out those roadmaps and see what financial risks, obligations, and outcomes come from that financial literacy and to plan for those things. I was a first-gen college student, and I tell Dr. Maxwell quite honestly, I will die with those student loans because I didn't know how to prepare. If I had tools like this, it would have better supported me in making decisions on what I took on as a burden. So stakeholder experiences is also important. We know it takes an entire village and more to get our kids to where they're going. And having parents and teachers and CCFs and counselors all involved, there are so many experiences that I can't mention them here, and I will take a breath when this presentation's over. But connecting stakeholders to support students is really powerful in this program. Counselors can see their caseload, they can view student planners, they can make sure the courses and everything that a student is putting together is really driving them towards their goals and interests. We can align to endorsements and make sure that our students' pathways are following in that course. CTE coding, CCMR course and graduation requirements can also be customized to fit our district improvement goals, our campus goals, and wanting to meet those. Registrars, counselors, and CCFs also have the ability to track college applications. What's really great about this is instead of that rote letter of recommendation I used to write as a teacher, I can go into the student profile and see why they really chose that college and add those interests and all of the things they've built in their resume into that recommendation letter right from the platform. We'll no longer need a third-party vendor like X2Vol to track volunteer hours and service cords. It is built into the system, so that eliminates clunkiness and also having additional memorandums of understanding. Transcript requests can be done with the push of a button, and then CCMR indicators, as I mentioned, are built right in and we can track. And the even better part of this is we're planning for our students' future forever. They have a permanent membership to this from our license as an alumni. So they can come back, they can update their portfolio, they can update their resume, and they want to come work for Lamar Consolidated Independent School District, they can do all of that there and push it back out. But it also links with the National Clearinghouse, which helps us be accountable for our data and where our students go in the post-secondary world. Customized learning plans for teachers are already aligned to TEACS. They're a local company, so out of Austin, yay, Texas. So they have a real focus on tracking the CCR requirements that are in our TEACS, and those are already aligned and can be pushed into the classrooms, and teachers can assign additional tasks. If they want to work on that resume or that letter to college in their ELAR class, they can bring these items together and really support that student. Military, jobs, internships, all of these things and much, much more are included in the program. And then I think the most important part that I learned from the parent nights this year is that parents really yearn to have these conversations with their kids. I have a 2- and 4-year-old, so they never stop talking, but what I've learned about teenagers is they don't come home and just want to share their whole day. So parents would be really excited that they can see everything that their student can see and talk to them about. Why did you pick that? What made you interested in that? I didn't even know that you liked biology, and really plan with their student, not go change what their student has put in, but they can really plan and view. And it also has a community portal that we can engage our community internships, apprenticeships, CTE partnerships to load data there to make our students stay in contact. And then CCMR tracking, this really excited me because it's a proactive at-the-finger approach for live where our students are, but it also projects where we're going. And so we can really take that live time to see where our kids are in course placements, TSI, like all of these things coming together in a view to show us where our kids are and where they need to go. The PD plan is going to be very robust, but at the center of it is really bringing all of the stakeholders together to make sure we know what role that we play to support our students getting where they want to go, as well as continued community engagement, parent nights, and engagement in the classroom with students so that they have an ownership. And this is the breath I promised. And any questions?
Sorry, could you go back to the slide just before this one?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
That was such a good sales pitch. You almost talked yourselves out of needing EOS because the kids are just so excited about college and career readiness that they don't need the motivation to be, I'm kind of being sarcastic, but Dr. Maxwell did a great job. I attended a Zello meeting and a Naviance meeting. He did a great job of selling the parents on all this, and all of a sudden we're pivoting to this for the next 5 years.
So I'll answer that question. With the tool that we have, I wanted to make sure that it was well used and well understood. When we reviewed School Links, I was blown away with the usability of School Links compared to the other programs that we had. It was so user-friendly. I actually have gone into the demo and only took 5 minutes, and I feel I could share with you where you could find everything in the actual demo. It is really from the group that we had there with what Ms. Troutman has mentioned, with counselors, college career facilitators, teachers, parents, and registrars. Overwhelmingly, School Links was to the top of their ratings, and that really came from that idea of usability, the information that comes from there for the students, the parents, and everyone involved with it. And so yes, Zello and Naviance do have their pros, but we felt as a committee, School Links was the product that was best for LCISD, best for our students, and best to help our students have those plans for college, career, military, and readiness.
And it is one platform
Yes,
versus
sir.
two?
It's one platform, so now all data can go with the student from 6th grade all the way through 12th, whereas previously the data from Zello stopped at 8th grade, would not travel to 9th grade because of 2 different companies.
So, if I can ask the question, so when they did their, the cost here, was Zello still only doing 6 through 8, or are they now coming up and becoming a program?
All the costs are apples to apples of grades 6 through 12. We did take into account the cost, but we also wanted to look at the product. What are we getting for our dollars? And so when we went through this, with all the community members,
Oh, so sorry.
all of the committee members, we did take into account costs. But again, we wanted to make sure the product was what was best for our students and community.
I was just looking at the difference, and there's a big difference. Thank
So
you.
you'll be doing training again with the parent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
We'll be at all the secondary campuses.
Great.
And with all the personnel.
So if the district does not renew this contract in 5 years, you were saying that the kids that graduate with it, they would, as long as this company survives, they would have access to.
As long as LCISD has a contract with School Links,
As long
our
as they have a
alumni,
contract.
they're connected to us as graduates, and they'd be alumni. They would have access to it as long as we have the contract with School Links. Yes.
Gotcha.
Are we able to migrate over the data from Naviance and Zello?
Yes, sir. We had actually one of the persons we didn't mention was a tech department person on there to ensure that we could migrate the information over.
Do you find this program easier to manipulate than the other, or they're apples and oranges again?
To manipulate and use, is that your question? By far, School Links was the easiest product to use.
Because if it's not easy, they don't do it.
And this is what we heard from parents on feedback too, during the parent nights.
Thank you.
Any question?
We disagree.
I
agree.
Are you excited?
Yes, I am.
Yes, same.
I'm still trying to figure out between this EOS and this program, the difference.
So EOS, we utilize to identify students to enroll in AP or dual credit courses.
And this will not do it.
This one is really to help our students plan post-secondary. It helps our students align, starting in 6th grade, having those conversations. What do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? How do I get there? And from 6th grade through 12th grade, they can put an action step plan together so that their counselors, college career facilitators, teachers, parents can work together to say, okay, if this is what you're wanting, this is the pathway you should take. EOS is really just a database to help us understand which students, based on multiple variables, would be a good candidate for an AP or dual credit course. They do 2 different things to enhance our students' educational careers through Lamar CISD.
So theirs is for later on, as they get into the 10th, 11th, 12th grade, pushing the AP.
That's EOS, definitely is
Yeah,
high school,
okay.
yes. And this starts in 6th grade,
This
looking at
starts
post-secondary.
Younger ones encouraging.
All the
Okay.
way through.
All right, I think I understand it now.
Any other questions? I did have one question. So if you have the parent nights and then, but you said the module, the training module for school links, it was 5 minutes and it was very user-friendly?
So I will just say this, there was not a learning module, I just went into a demo account and played with it. And it became so easy, I could find everything through there. We'll set up specific trainings though, so that we support each user.
So, because something that came out of the community conversations was they needed, if they couldn't make it to the parent training nights, they really wanted somebody to still walk them through it, not just here's a link. So can we prepare something like that if we change?
So.
Maybe like a Zoom, like a live Zoom?
Oh, we can
or
definitely work
something,
through some of those as
you know,
well.
yeah.
Now that we've learned how to use Zoom so well, we can definitely bring that into part of our PD and training.
I think that would be very good for.
A little
a lot of
webinar.
parents.
There are some videos embedded in the program that teaches you how to do it.
But, and I'm sure there are, but it's having somebody walk you through it is still, has a lot of value to a lot of parents, you know, that they felt like they could ask questions at the same time, even if they're technically challenged like some of us. So it is helpful to offer those, you know, the live Zooms
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well. So I would suggest that for something new. Any other questions?
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to consider approval of revisions to Lamar CISD Voluntary Section 403B Plan Documents, the extension of First Financial Administrators as administrator of the plan, and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreement.
Any questions? Alex? I mean, Mr. Hunt, sorry.
I just wanted to see if there are any substantive major differences between the old plan documents and this one.
What we're doing with this item is going to a new well, it's not a new plan, but it's the way the IRS looks at plan documents, and it's a group, it's like a group submission of documents. A lot of different employers have the same exact document. We did this a few months ago with our excess 403B plan. They didn't have before there was not a real consistent review process done by the IRS on these type documents, but now there is. And if you can be under a program where there are a whole lot of consistent documents, you're in better shape and you're probably more likely to be compliant as a plan. And you want the plan to be compliant so that the tax implications to the people that participate are in place. You know,
So
the tax deferral, basically.
We're repackaging it just for compliance purposes.
Yes.
And the end user likely isn't going to see any difference.
Correct. They're not going to see any difference. We didn't change any of the plan, like how much you can contribute, any of the hardship loans or anything like that. We didn't change any of the parameters. We're just changing the document and the way the document looks.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
The next item is the board actually designating a delegate and an alternate to the Texas Association School Boards Fall Convention.
Anybody have any?
Well, if they have it live, do you think they're gonna have it?
Well, actually, I can speak to this. Mr. Rice, I don't know if he's in the room, but he helped me get in touch with Docs Gonzalez from TASB.
Right.
And so I had a, what?
Is he still?
It's okay. Oh, you don't need to get him. Sorry, I was just giving him props for helping me out. A couple of things that he explained to me. Let me get to the page, sorry.
140?
Thank you. Where am I? Oh, this is my, here, that's it. Where did I put my notes? It was on something else. Actually, if I didn't rerun it here. So right now they're considering a hybrid, and so they don't know, they'll roll that out later this summer. And so it's not till October this year instead of
Right,
September.
which is fine.
Hopefully the weather will cooperate this year for whoever gets to go. And so it's a hybrid, but they're thinking a hybrid, it's not confirmed, which will mean some in person, if you're rather do virtual as well. Also, we will receive the handbook with all the resolutions and the priorities that they're considering at least 2 weeks ahead of the conference. And so I have asked him to, because our meeting falls around 2 weeks beforehand, if we could get that, and if we don't get it in time, he's going to send us a draft, which is going to be very close to the final, so that we can all see what the priorities and the resolutions are. So it'll be nice. And
They
so
usually have tried to bring the kid in about the time of our board meetings, that
Yes.
we would get them here. But
Yeah.
last year, I don't think they
We didn't have
did it.
anything.
Well, they were trying to do everything, online last year.
Yeah. So if there's no. You okay?
Did something fall? Oh, that display.
Oh,
The display.
She's okay.
Okay, carry on.
Carry on. Nobody's hurt. Okay. So I would like to make a couple nominations. Is anybody, I guess I can make, no. Thursday, just kidding. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not gonna make any tonight. But that's some of the information that I received. And everybody is welcome to go. But we will need a delegate and an alternate. And I think everybody except for Mr. Welch and Mr. Hunt has been so far, correct?
When is the date?
October 2nd through the 4th. But everybody's been to the TASB convention before, correct?
Right.
Y'all
Oh, yeah.
all been? Okay, all right. I don't know if Mr. Hubenak has.
Yeah,
He's
he's
been?
been.
Okay.
Yes, he has.
He's been to convention. I don't know if he's been to Dallas, but we've all been to
To
convention
the convention,
in
okay.
Austin.
Yeah.
He was there in Austin.
Okay, that's all I have. Anybody else have any questions about it?
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the service agreement with Memorial Hermann Benefit Corporation.
Okay.
The next item, we ask that the board approve the service provider agreement between Fort Bend Regional Council on Substance Abuse and Lamar Consolidated Independent School District for campus programming from September 1 to August 31, 2023.
Any questions?
I have a question, just a minor question on this. Since they do counseling in the schools, depending on how, and I think this is a fantastic organization, depending on how we go back to school, how would this look? Or if we go back, when and how we go back to school, would this kind of a program work for us? I mean, I think it's a great program, but I'm just kind of curious. Could they do things, I guess they could do some video stuff and whatnot, if, depending on what happens?
Right, I sound like a broken record, it depends.
Okay, I got you. I know,
Yeah.
I guess everything kind of depends right now.
It does,
Okay.
it really does.
Okay, I mean, I think they're great. I'm just curious how that would work. Okay, thank you.
Kind of feel our way through it.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the service provider agreement between Texas Child Health Access through Telemedicine and Lamar CISD during the 2021 school year.
Any questions? No?
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve NAVCON Group for the Jane Long Historic Gym renovations in the amount of $2,801,335 and authorize the Board President to execute the agreement.
We have a presentation?
We don't, but they are here to answer questions.
Is anybody, Mr. Rice is coming in ready. Do we have any questions? No? All right, thank you, Mr. Rice.
Let them stay there, we have a lot to go now.
Oh, okay.
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve Bass Construction for the multipurpose and orchestra additions and renovations in the amount of $7,968,955 and authorize the Board President to execute the agreement.
Any questions?
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve Estes McClure and Associates as commissioning agent for multipurpose and orchestra additions and renovations in the amount of $13,000 and authorize the Board President to execute the agreement.
No questions?
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees to approve engineered air balance for the HVAC test and balance service for the multipurpose and orchestra additions and renovations in the amount of $21,595 and authorize the Board President to execute the agreement.
No questions?
Next item, we ask the Board to approve an amendment to the contract with Ramallah Construction Company to establish the guaranteed maximum price. Number 2, for project number 1 for the additions and renovations of Lamar Consolidated High School and Lamar Junior High School in the amount of $13,295,104. Next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve Terracon Incorporated for materials testing for the Lamar Consolidated High School and Lamar Junior High School additions and renovations in the total amount of $93,200 and authorize the Board President to execute the agreement. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve engineered air balance for the HVAC test and balance service for the HVAC web controls at Lamar Consolidated High School and Lamar Junior High School additions and renovations, package number 1 and package number 2, in the amount of $86,220 and authorize the Board President to execute the agreement. The next item, we ask the Board to approve the 2020-2021 Student Handbook.
I have several questions. Does anybody else want to start? Should we start with the elementary or I'll start with elementary. I have fewer questions for elementary. All right. So page 58 in the elementary handbook. I was curious, so it says that we started the smart tag system this past school year. And then I wanted to see the matching information. I know it was from the 2017 bond, in the project list. So page 230, so page 58 in the handbook, going with page 235 in our board book. Is that going to be listed? Or it's a little bit blurry on page 235, so I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss it. Sorry. Okay. So the elementary handbook on page 58 talks about the smart tag, right? And then on our handbook, our board book, page 235, under the project list.
I'm gonna make a stab at this while you guys are looking for it. The handbook is probably written in addressing smart tag that's gonna go into effect. We're still finishing up smart tag. I think, and Chris can better answer this question about the number of buses that we have complete smart tag and when that'll go online.
We had completed the agreement with Smart Tag, and we were going to do a modified rollout in the spring to test that on a few buses and a few routes. Obviously, that didn't occur. We are now, we've been working with the vendor throughout the summer, and they're installing all of the hardware, and they'll be training on the tablets and all that. So it will be a district-wide rollout in the fall. We'll do a phased rollout to make sure the program's working. but it will be district-wide in the fall.
Okay, that's where the confusion, because it says that we did this past school year, and that's in the handbook, but we didn't really, because of COVID, we weren't able to,
Yes.
and that's why, so it's a little bit,
That's correct.
we might
Correct.
just take out that wording that, because we didn't technically.
Yes.
I was just like, how did I miss that? So anyways, I didn't, it was COVID. Okay, thank you, that's it for that one.
Okay.
Um,
I had something on that subject right there.
Okay.
Why, it says if a student does not have their badge for 5 consecutive days, why are we allowing them to be that long? That's a whole week.
For
I mean,
smart tag?
Yes. If a student does not have his or her smart tag ID badge for 5 consecutive days,
This is page 58 in the
58.
elementary handbook as well.
it says LCISD department will then contact the school or campus so that the campus may communicate and notify to the parent. 5 days just seems like a long time to go by without letting anybody know they don't have their badge.
Well, I think what you try to do is build into a process where you're not burdening with administration with a lot of one-offs. So the way, as we implement the plan, we want to give the kids an opportunity to learn the plan without consequences first. So the 5 days.
Every time this may change down to
Well,
3
and
days.
And what Smart Tag has shared with us is that doesn't occur very often, and they've rolled this program out a lot. So what we'd like to do is if we've got it, typically what you'll have is if a student loses theirs, they'll say, I lost it. Well, then you go through and replace it. If they continue to forget it for those times, then after a while it becomes an issue where administration would address it.
On that topic, do I recall Mr. Jones saying that if they don't have the RFID card, that the bus driver would manually input that they're there?
That is correct.
That's correct.
That is correct. There is not an occurrence where we would not allow the child to ride the bus.
Or that the
You would
parent
know
would be
they
like,
are
why
on the
didn't my
bus.
kid get on the bus? But they actually are on the bus. They'll
Correct.
know that they're on the bus.
Yes, and that's part of the training with the drivers that will occur this fall, is how to manually enter that in if they don't have theirs. It's a pretty quick process.
Thank you. My next question's on page 69 of the elementary handbook. I wanted to just talk about, since we're considering changing the grading scale for elementary, what the pros and cons, or why we're considering that. I know we did for the secondary level, but why we're considering that for elementary.
I'm sorry, why
So-
we are not considering? I'm sorry.
Why we're considering, it says secondary no longer has Ds, should this be removed for elementary?
Okay,
We
that
have
was
that
a
in the
point of
handbook.
discussion when we first started looking at the handbook, but due to the fact that we did not have the opportunity to vet that through our principals and focus groups, we determined that we would leave it as is for this upcoming year.
We are, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And it's correct now in the white ones, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it, okay, well, I had all my notes in the one we already got, so there's no way for me to switch right now. Okay, that's good to know, thank you. Okay. And then page 71, and if it's already been corrected in the other one, you can just say that too, but for the late work on the bottom of page 71, we've taken out classwork will be accepted late within the current grading period. And now it says work not received within the grading period will result in a 0. So how is late work gonna work? What does that look like? You have the whole grading period to turn it in and
Yes, ma'am. The procedure didn't change. We've always accepted late work
Right.
until the end. We
Right.
really just cleaned up the wording to make it, we felt clear that if it's not received by the end of the grading period, the child would get a 0. But again, there's extenuating circumstances that the campus definitely works with the children and the parents on that for elementary.
Okay, thank you. Page 71 of the same book, under language arts, at the bottom, we're switching from 8 minor grades to 5. a minimum of 8 to a minimum of 5?
Yes, ma'am. The language arts and reading, some of the TEKs changed last year.
Okay.
And so it includes more of the compositions and the combined writing and looking at spelling and grammar together. So everyone felt like taking the 5 grades would produce the same results because those assignments tend to be larger and take more time.
Okay, thank you. So then page 79, I was curious as to why we're deleting, and maybe because we put it somewhere else, but I didn't see it. On page 79, why we're deleting the guidelines for grading recent EL immigrant students.
Okay, so.
Is that somewhere else that?
No, ma'am.
No.
On that one, the TEA had frequently asked questions, and that is now, we're focusing on the English language proficiency strategies to help make sure that all students have equal access. So it was based on the TEI guidelines.
Okay, so that's it for, does anybody else have any elementary handbook questions?
I would like to know more about GRA at a later time, how it differs from DRA.
The GRA and the DRA?
You don't have to do that now, but I'd like to know more later.
Okay, thank you. Our expert Teresa Gage is not here right now.
You know me.
Yeah, I had, on page 77, under the arts, it says an art committee meeting, I look at it that it's saying now may be conducted if a student receives failing grades during each grading period. Isn't that still important enough that you should have a meeting instead of, it was changed from
Right,
must
yes, ma'am.
to may?
So the process that we utilized this year was through our PLC program, where the campuses are still talking about the students, and the principals and assistant principals are involved in that. So the students' grades are being discussed, but the things that we can do don't necessarily take an ARD committee to make that decision. So if there was going to be a change that needed to be through an ARD committee, then they would hold one, but it is not necessary just to talk about a child who is in jeopardy of failing.
Is the parent involved in that?
You know, at elementary, during the initial discussion, the parent may not be involved, but I would say yes, anytime a child is got a failing progress report, we do communicate with the parents, and we can set up just informal meetings with the parent. It doesn't have to be an ARD meeting, where it involves a lot more people.
Okay. And then in general, I have a question just about the handbook itself. With COVID, and now we're having so many restrictions, so many things in here won't necessarily be applying to the way we start and our buses and everything. So do we have an addendum or something set up? When we give this to the parents, it's gonna be like, oh, but there's gonna be some changes. Do y'all anticipate that?
Well, I think that's we don't have any definitive answers in regard to what that's going to look like. We feel that grading, though, and a lot of these processes, obviously this is structured for a traditional school year. And that once we get more information, we definitely will pivot and beginning to make the necessary revisions. When we began to look at the handbooks and all departments began to review each portion of it, we were looking at it through the COVID eyes as well, particularly as you look at secondary, and we began to look at the final exemptions. We pulled back from it being excused absences only to unexcused absences in light of that. And so all of our academic team was looking at the handbook with those lenses. But of course, as we continue to get updates, we will continue to update our parents.
Okay, so this is not gospel until we get COVID out of the way.
I think we react to it the same way we did this spring. We had handbook in place, but when everything happened, we had to make adjustments, and we had to respond to what the governor was saying, respond to what the commissioner was saying, and then in-house, trying to make sure that we did the least amount of harm to our kids. So I think that what they've done is kind of looked at the lenses of what the system would look like, and then we'll have to make adjustments. We may have to come back to the board to change some policies or procedures that are in the student handbook, but we don't know yet.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any elementary? You have elementary?
I did. So I have a question on page 16, and it might just, the language just seems.
I'm sorry, which page?
Page 16.
16.
And the language just seems a little bit confusing. It says students who do not arrive in class by 7:30 a.m. are tardy for full day and half-day morning students, and 11:25 a.m. for half-day afternoon students, and are subject to disciplinary action. Maybe just need to separate that into two sentences. It's just a little bit hard to follow.
What page was it again,
Page
Mr.?
16,
Page
under
16 on
the
top,
top.
It's not
the
the-
tardy, the first sentence.
I'm trying,
I was trying to figure out who was the afternoon schedule. I was thinking we had now like pre-K, kindergarten, full days.
I think that's
If
what it
we're
means.
talking about half-day.
If you're not there by 7:30 for a full day and half-day morning students, then you're tardy. 11 by 11:25 for afternoon students, but it's just.
we're trying to find the corrected page because that indicates that we had a change.
Oh.
This is in the final one, too.
Students who do not arrive in class by 7:30 a.m. are tardy for a full day, and a half-day morning students at 11:25 for the half-day afternoon students, and are subject to disciplinary action. And so your recommendation is for us to reword it so it is clear, more, has greater clarity to our
That's
parents.
fine, if it's clear to everybody else.
I think the question
It'd
is,
be like-
do we have any
It's
Come on,
a little
Alex.
confusing to
No,
me.
the way I
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
reading,
Our
Come on.
the way I
ECS.
read it was.
Clear as day.
Yeah.
So yes, in elementary,
Unless you have
our
to follow it
early
yourself.
childhood special education students may attend for a morning session or an afternoon session. Our pre-K students are full day.
okay. But do those students fall into the same guidelines of having to not be tardy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, they're still under the compulsory attendance law.
Okay, okay.
I think where you put that, where it says 7:30 a.m. are tardy for full day, period, and then half-day morning
For
student.
the,
I think they're gonna work on that.
yes, we will work on that.
Thank you.
It is referencing the half-day children and after 7:25 versus then your second day would be after the 11:25, and we can make the necessary adjustments.
Anybody else have questions on the elementary handbook?
I
Okay.
have Katie is here to Mrs. Marchena to answer the DRA-GRA question.
Just a quick little update. So GRA is the Fontes and Pinnell system. So it's research based. It's a newer guided reading assessment. So GRA just stands for guided reading assessment. And the next steps in guided reading is the resource that goes with that. So DRA is a bit outdated. We've been using it for quite some time. So this is an update. We rolled out K through 2 mid-year this last year, but then of course COVID happened. So we're rolling gradually into next year with 3 through 5 the following year.
And then providing all the,
We've purchased the kits. Our reading facilitators, coaches have had the training. They're delivering that training on their campuses. So initial training happened prior to COVID, and we'll readdress in the fall. And again, we'll launch next year in the fall with just K through 2, and then roll forward with 3 through 5 training starting second semester and roll out the following fall.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so secondary handbook, does anybody want to go first?
I have one question on page 11 on the secondary handbook, and then on page 13 on the elementary handbook.
Oh, we're still, okay. We can go.
Well, there's the same sections there
Gotcha.
under absences slash attendance. but it
Sorry,
looks
what
like-
page in elementary?
13.
And then 11 on secondary. It looks like there were just some language changes to page 13 on the elementary handbook, but it doesn't look like those same changes are reflected in the secondary.
Which paragraph are you looking at?
Under religious holy days, required court appearances, activities related to obtaining United States citizenship.
Currently, right now, what it says in the final formatted piece of that is a student who is observing holy days, is that what you're talking about specifically?
Right.
Is allowed up to 1 day of excused travel to the site where the student and will observe the holy days. To be considered a religious holiday, the day should be recognized by the student's religious denomination as a holy day that is required to be observed by all members of that denomination. Cultural holidays, church retreats, camps, and individual religious rites do not qualify as religious holy days. For an excused absence, a note must be sent to the school explaining the absence. The student will not be penalized for that absence. Perfect attendance, awards, exam exemptions, etc., FEA legal. And so when each of the committees that were reviewing that, they're looking at it through the lens of their audience sometimes in regard to not drastically changing the verbiage in both of these handbooks.
Well, it sounds like that language is the same as what's in the elementary handbook. It just makes sense to me that if we make those, and they're really just language stylistic changes, just to make them in both, just so they're the same.
We can do that. Yes.
I do have a question, because my kids, every year I had to go up to the school. The day they would observe a religious holiday, they were not supposed to be counted absent at all. Is that changed?
That has not changed, no.
Okay, because it's not even unexcused or excused, it was, you were basically counted here. That was always hard for registrars.
No, you will be counted absent, but it is an excused
Okay,
absence.
see, that was not what, if that's been changed over the years, because over the years it was not even supposed to be an excused absence, it was supposed to be by law, because my husband always had to get the books out, that I gotta take this off a minute. They were not supposed to be counted absent or excused or unexcused, they were counted here. So I didn't know if that law had changed over the years or not. It's just bringing in a letter or an app to show that that's where they had been that day.
Yeah, I know that we have to account for students that are physically present, or if they're not present, then we have to account for them as excused or unexcused. So I'm not sure if it's changed recently, but I know that's the main.
We believe within the law what it states is that we cannot do any harm to, but we have to record whether a child is present or not present.
But it wasn't supposed to go against their perfect attendance.
It does, it says that on here, it says
Okay,
the
but
student will
that-
not be penalized for that absence.
That's what I'm saying, but by still saying excused absence, it contradicts itself. So I don't know if you could just look into that one more time for me, please.
Yes, sir. I mean, yes, ma'am. We will do that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
We will do
all
that.
right. It's been a few years since I've been.
Mr. Moore actually has some response to that as well from the attendance standpoint. I think that's important for
Okay.
you also.
Technically, it is not counted as an absence. It's coded as a religious holiday.
Okay,
And
so
we
it
have
has
a-
not changed over the years.
That hasn't changed. We have a code in Skyward that allows us to do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Is that what you were thinking about?
Yeah, but
No.
that's not what that says here.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Elementary? Okay, so secondary, anybody else secondary? I'll go with mine. Okay. So page 3 in the secondary, I don't think it's made it has been, I'm gonna make sure that. So this thing that we got tonight is all the changes to the new one, I mean, from the old to the new?
Correct.
Okay, So it might answer my question then. I'm not sure what the order is, but consent to conduct. Delete unnecessary statement regarding SPED requirements. These are the changes that you're asking for, not necessarily from the one we got tonight to the new ones, right?
So the changes that are reflected in the summary page are the changes that have been made, and it's reflected in the new
one?
documents that you have, yes.
Okay, so on the new one, we're still deleting regarding requirements for special education? That sentence on page 3, we're still deleting that?
That sentence has been deleted.
Okay, so why are we deleting that?
Well, it was deleted to meet the current TEA guidelines as it relates to consent to conduct psychological evaluation for students needing special education services.
Okay, thank you. Then on page 9, I was curious, this is just out of curiosity, do we have any students that currently use service animals on our campuses? Do we?
As of this school year, yes, that is correct, yes.
Okay. High school level or elementary? Foster does? Okay.
We have a high school student that I know that has a service animal.
Okay, good to know, thank you.
Is it dog? Are they dogs?
At Foster, that is a dog.
Yes.
Are there any other service animals permitted on legal? I'm just curious, like, I don't even know what else could be possibly used.
I'm going to have to look into that. I am not sure.
Don't spend a lot of time on it.
Was it a dog?
There was a dog.
It was a dog.
There was a dog at Foster, I know.
I like a small horse, I don't know.
But I don't know. I mean, other than that, I don't know.
I don't know.
You never know these days. People on planes,
Never
they take
do.
all kind of things on planes.
Right.
I was like, but they tried to take on the.
Yeah, I know.
Peacock.
I had a question, but I can't find what page it was on. And maybe I'm just trying to remember something that doesn't exist. When a student's out of our country for 30 days, that there's a requirement when they come back? Is that in here? Did I read that? I'm just not able to find the page. I didn't write it down.
I believe it's under the nurses section, and I believe it has to do with testing for tuberculosis.
Yes.
If they're under immunization.
Okay.
And yes, that's still in here.
That's still in
Yes,
there.
ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then page 16, with the child nutrition services, with these new changes, how are the students made aware of the new changes?
We try to get the student handbook approved before the end of the school year so we could publish it as soon as possible over the summer. It is part of the beginning of the year forms that parents have to read and sign. So that is one way that parents are made aware of the new changes in the handbook. But also, if there are major changes, campuses also will communicate that to students and parents.
So the students actually hear it spoken from somebody on campus?
That is correct,
Okay, 'cause
especially if there are
I know
major
not everybody reads
changes.
the whole handbook, and so maybe most people probably do, but I just think it's important that the students, even if the parents heard it, if they didn't relay it well, so everybody's on the same page, and so they're not shocked by anything, so.
That is
It's good to
correct.
know that the students hear it themselves.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've got more unless anybody wants to jump in.
Oh, you're on a roll.
Page 42, under the library section, we scratched out will and added the word may. So I was curious as how, is that subjective or objective, or how are we determining if they may or may not get a fine?
They are assessed a fine, but we do not want the situation where students will not be able to check out a book at the library because they do have a fine. So we encourage them to pay the fine. We do every possible way to try to get them to pay. But, if they are unable to pay, we still allow them to have access to books in the library. So we felt that it was important for us to change the wording in the handbook to may instead of must, just to give students the option to know that just by having the fine on their record will not prevent them from being able to still check out books in the library.
But then if they're But then they can't get, can they, let's see. But then if they don't pay the fines, then it will result in a loss of school privileges or final exam exemptions.
That is correct.
So they can still check out books, but there is a penalty, I mean, there's a consequence if they, and ultimately if they don't.
Yes, they will lose certain privileges, which exemption is one of them, or, you know, attending school parties could be one of them. Yes, they will still be held responsible for that.
And so the librarian communicates this to them at the time, that if you can't pay it right now, you can still check out books, but there will be consequences down the road if you don't ultimately pay them.
That is correct. And in the case with exemptions, you know, one of the requirements for them to get an exemption is that they clear their fines. So if they still have a fine, including library fines, then it will prevent them from being able to get a final exam exemption.
So there's a little grace, but then it's like, but
That's
here's the
correct.
consequences.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Are there rules or is there a policy about who will be fined and when, just so it's not arbitrary?
There is the librarian does set up the guidelines of, you know, how much is charged per days that are late. So there is a set fee for what the fee is for how many days students are late in returning the books.
I think what you're, can I ask if you're asking, is that we provide this opportunity for all of our kids that, again, to show grace within the fines. And then our schools, as all of our campuses do, will continue to address specific special circumstances, because sometimes those circumstances are not the same at the beginning of the year that they're at the end of the year. And so when you say we will, that kind of puts you in a corner, but our expectation is trying to get the funds back. However, we are going to show some discretion within special circumstances.
And then page 69. Trying to read my own handwriting here, let's see. So we took out, if an EL does not demonstrate adequate measurable progress, and maybe this was corrected in the new one. Was anything changed with this first paragraph? Basically, I'm asking, are they ever going to receive a failing grade? Or is it saying no matter what, they will not receive a failing grade in that first paragraph? So it says, we've deleted, then the student may receive a failing grade.
Which heading are you in, Ms.
So page
Mrs.
69,
Williams?
it's just the top, there's no heading at the top, it's just the first paragraph.
It's English learner policy guide.
Okay.
If an EL does not demonstrate adequate measurable progress after routinely and consistently being provided appropriate linguistic accommodation and sheltered instructional strategy, then the referred student to LPAC campus committee for further analysis and adjustment of the student's individual's need and support. I think what that statement is saying is that even after the teachers have provided the linguistic accommodation, if the student is not showing progress or the student is not advancing based on the objectives that have been spelled out, then the student is referred back to the LPAC committee, which is very similar to the art committee, to determine if there needs to be additional support that needs to be provided to the students.
Your question, Mrs. Williams,
It's about failing.
was-
Can they have a possible failing grade?
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, but we took that out, right? Then do we put that back in somewhere?
I think the reason that the language was removed was that the equity piece. So the LPAC committee is going to consider why the student has a failing grade. And they're going to determine if the right accommodations were in place and the right supports were in place. Or, you know, is it an issue, let's say it's an example of they're not turning in their work. Well, if that's the case, it's not related to their language concerns, it's related to work habits, then that failing grade may happen. But we don't want to give a failing grade, or we don't want to say we're going to give a failing grade. We want the LPAC committee to decide based on all of the information they have. So the language that was in there, I'm trying to remember, was limiting and didn't match the guidance from TEA.
When you look at, when we look at MTSS, multi-tiered support systems, and we've talked a lot about RTI, RTI or MTSS is really how you intervene. Let's say we're looking at grade reporting, and for your general ed population, you're failing, you're not turning in assignments, the teacher's continuing to reteach, you're not learning, you're gonna go into those tiers, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. And then when you start looking at kids that receive special education, are under LPAC, that have a language acquisition issue, and or 504, those committees work with those particular groups of kids to help troubleshoot, so that our goal is that the kids are not failing, that there are certain supports that we can do, whether it's social emotional, whether it's academic, to support a kid to where that we've done everything we possibly can so that they can be successful. So but the answer to your question is, can they fail? Yes, there can be a failing grade.
Okay. Not that we want them to, obviously.
It's not our best practice.
But I just,
correct.
I guess, to me, when we take it out, that a flag that pops up for me is, we're just gonna pass them and move them on, you know what I mean? And so, and because you go to summer school if you fail, correct? Or that's the next step type
Correct.
thing? And so they would still have the opportunity to go to summer school, because everybody loves that opportunity, but, and it's, they don't just get passed.
Correct, but
Okay.
before we
I mean, you
get
try
to-
everything you can kind of thing, but.
Correct,
Okay.
and so the intervention piece is, and at the end of the year, you might be at a spot where a kid is going to summer school, but the information that we have throughout the year is there's been a number of things that have done before we get to that point.
Gotcha.
And there's different committees, RTI, General Ed, or MTSS, now it's now called, the 504 committee, the ARD committee, and the LPAC committee. They're gonna work with those kids specifically to address and support those kids before we're at the end of the year reporting for that. But if a kid is not doing anything and we've troubleshooted with their parents and we've done everything, yes, those children can receive a failing grade.
Gotcha. Thank you for that answer. I think that's it for me. Anyone else? We're just
We
awake.
have an answer also to your, the animals question. Sorry, we are having to bring our staff downstairs, so there's a little pause for that.
Let's hear this.
Mrs. Mathis, would you like to explain the service animals?
That was John, Mr. Welch's curiosity.
Yes.
Oh, okay, what was your question? I'm sorry.
Are there any other service animals in the district besides canines, besides dogs?
No, that is it. We've only had dogs.
Bummer.
That's it. The only other option is a miniature horse.
I've seen that on the internet for
Yes.
Southwest Airlines, and
That is the only other option.
That's why
We do not have any.
Probably a good thing.
Yes, for me.
Thank you. Okay, so no other questions? Okay, where are we at?
The next item, the board president, those are all action items, Madam President. We're now moving to information items. And the first one is appointment of board committees. And that's what,
Dr.
board
Randall,
pres-
I just wanted to let you know that there are no audience and patrons.
Thank you.
That's between.
Then the next item is, or if there are any questions regarding, well, actually, we have a budget workshop.
Good evening. I'd like to bring everyone up to speed as to all the activities that we've done with respect to budgeting for the 2021 year and the financial status of that. Uh-oh, I think I just cut it off. Okay. Tonight, I'd like to talk about the types of revenues, also our expenditure budget, and then the building blocks of our budget each year. First of all,
Ms. Ludwig, just a minute.
I don't have
Ms. Danziger is having difficulties with her.
And I can't see from the back. It went dark.
Is that the same, is everything gonna be the same on here?
Yeah,
Yes.
probably so. It just-
I was gonna say, you can use mine, I'm not,
No,
I'm gonna
I'm
read this.
good. I
Okay.
just didn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to remind everyone that there are 3 budgets that are required to be adopted by the Board of Trustees, and that's the general fund budget, the debt service budget, and the child nutrition budget. First, we'll talk about the general fund. And in the general fund, there's 3 categories of revenue: local, state, and federal. The local revenue, the bulk of it, which are your property taxes. Your state revenue is the actual state aid is the bulk of your state revenue. And then in the general fund, we also report just about 1% of federally funded revenue, or federally sourced revenue. So now I'd like to focus on the local revenue piece first. The property taxes and the M&O rate. So our current year levy is estimated, the current year levy for the 2021 year, or any year for that matter, is estimated based on the preliminary estimate of value from the Fort Bend CAD. This year, we're discounting the estimate that they've given us by 7%, and that's what that's what the chief appraiser actually recommended, because at this point in time, they're just starting to look at the protests, and the ARB is considering reductions in values. So they ask us to reduce the value by 7%. We're using a 98.5% collection rate, which is what we typically use. And then we add delinquent taxes and penalties and interest on top of that to get our tax budget. This year, as well as in the 1920 year, we had a lot of provisions from House Bill 3 that we had to incorporate in the budget. And it impacts the M&O rate more in the second year of House Bill 3 than it did in the first year. Of course, we did have tax rate compression. If you'll remember, we had to drop from $1 to 93 cents. So there was compression in this current fiscal year as well. But next year, it's going to be, and for years after that, the impact of tax rate compression is going to be greater. There's a little uncertainty there. Actually, there's a lot of uncertainty there because the compressed rate that each district has is and will be different than possibly the district that's next door to them. Because the compressed or the compression of the tax rate depends on the statewide average property value growth. So all the modeling that the state has done has used an average of 4.01% as the estimate of growth from the 19 tax year to the 20 tax year. So if a district's property value growth is greater than 4.01%, then they're going to see a higher level of compression. So at exactly a 4.01% rate of growth for the district, which would be equal to the state, they're going to see a 0.9164 compressed rate. Our district will have greater value growth than that, so we're expecting to be closer to 90 cents or so. So we're starting with 0.8992. The reason I go through all that is because we don't know what that rate's going to be, and we won't know till the first week of August is when the TEA is going to release those. There's a survey, and there's all kinds of things that have to go on between now and then. So we're starting with the 0.8992, and then we're adding our 4 enrichment pennies, and then we're modeling the additional penny that's available to us with unanimous board approval. So it's the 89, roughly 90 cents plus the 5 cents, which would be the M&O rate that we're looking at. Also in the general fund local revenue section are going to be your investment earnings, donations, facility rentals, athletic revenue, and a few other miscellaneous categories. The projected total for the general fund that's just attributed to local revenues is $179.016 million, or about 53.3%. A little bit more about property values. We're, like I mentioned before, right now we're using the chief appraiser's early or preliminary estimate of values, and we're discounting it at 93%. And we're actually showing value growth of approximately 6.08% over the 19 year. And that compares to 5.39 in 2019, 3.65 in 2018, about 5.5 in 2017, and almost 9.5% in 2016. As I've said before, we're making these adjustments to be a little bit more conservative in our estimates of revenue, but we'll be refining that as we go. Right now, we have about $4.443 billion in freeze-adjusted taxable value that is under consideration by the ARB. A lot of the properties that are seeing protests right now are commercial values. So we have almost $4.5 million that's under protest right now. Billion, $4.5 billion. The values determined by the appraisal district, of course, you've got to remember, are reviewed by the comptroller's office, and they have to be within a certain range. So it's actually within about a 10% range above and below what the state thinks our values should be. So there are benchmarks and audits of how our local appraisal districts are doing. The preliminary net taxable values as adjusted for the freezes is at 17.807 billion right now. The amount after the adjustments I just talked about that we're using for budgeting is 16.38 billion. Our current taxes are estimated at 172.8 million for the general fund, and as I said earlier, we'll update that at each meeting. We are estimating delinquent tax collections at 1.6 million and penalty and interest at 900,000. So total taxes are 175.338 million. This is a quick snapshot of how it's calculated. You'll see the current 1920 tax collection estimate and the 2021 preliminary. There's your 16.379 billion in taxable value, and there's the 0.9492 total M&O rate. That produces about 155.5 million in taxes. Then we add on the frozen taxes, so that's the actual amount of taxes that will be levied on frozen taxpayers, for a total of about 175.5 million, and then you multiply that by the collection rate of 98.5%, and that produces $172.838 million in taxes. Moving on to state revenues, the bulk of that money is from the foundation school program and also the per capita allotment. We add on TRS on behalf payments of $15 million and then a few other miscellaneous grants. Your projected total is $152.86 million for this year, or about almost 46% of total general fund revenue. Federal revenues are about 1% of the general fund budget. We are budgeting about $4 million. And that includes indirect cost reimbursements, which are our administrative fees and things that we can charge the federal funds for our administrative services that we provide to the federal grant programs. Also, 2 Medicaid programs, SHARS and MAC, and also ROTC reimbursements. So that's about a total of $4 million. And then looking at each piece of the general fund budget, you'll see property taxes up there at $175.3 million, and the next biggest category is your state aid, which is at $137.835 million, and then the TRS on behalf payments at $15 million, for a total of $335.9 million. Now I'll cover a little bit about how we go about building the budget. Even with COVID-19, between January and May, we have distributed the per pupil allocations. Campuses, departments have all entered their budgets. We've accounted for them, reconciled them, verified them, and we've developed the first pass of the budget. Now through July, we will do an in-depth review of the special budget requests, salary projections, and we'll refine all the revenue categories like we always do. And then in August, we'll do the final review. We'll discuss the two-part tax rate, do a budget hearing and budget adoption, and then we'll do tax rate adoption. Personnel and benefits encompass about 84% of the general fund budget annually. Most of the personnel units and salary allocations are made centrally, and it's based on staffing guidelines and campus needs. The benefits for personnel are also managed centrally. The biggest of those are our health and workers' comp plans. And then we've also incorporated the TASB study and the recommendations within this budget. We give allocations to the campuses based on enrollment. They get a per pupil enrollment, as you see down at the bottom. The basic one is $110 for high schools, junior highs at $90, middle schools at $80, and elementary schools at $70. We give them a $3.50 per student printing allotment, and these are all based on our fall snapshot enrollment numbers. For elementary and secondary, we also give them some additional allocations over and above those per pupil allocations, and they include monies for bus trips, for overtime with their campus hourly staff, band instrument repairs and parts, student travel allocations, and then other supplemental funding, mainly from state programs, such as special ed, state comp ed, gifted and talented, pre-K, bilingual, and career and tech. So far, our big ticket items, of course, include salaries at $233.781 million. This budget will be subject to change as positions are filled, excess positions are eliminated, and terminations are posted. And in the budget, we've also got an estimated employee salary increase. It's roughly $6 million. It's an average of 2% for teachers and 2% of midpoint, along with the TASB recommendations. Benefits and allowances are at $49 million, 15 of that being those TRS on behalf payments. Utilities are right at $9 million. Fuel is at $1.68 million. That would be for transportation and buses. Technology is right at $7 million. That includes software support and maintenance agreements, licensing, fees and dues, equipment purchases, things like that. And then the property casualty insurance for next year is $1.82 million, with $1.6 being for property and about $210,000 for fleet. And then our Fort Bend CAD and tax collection fees combined are $1.84 million, with the bulk of that being the Fort Bend CAD fee, which is a formula-driven fee that's split up between all the taxing entities. All right, so here's the total. We're at $336,259,465, with the bulk of it being at $282.782 million in payroll costs. That's salaries and benefits. And another $29 million for professional and contracted services. So you'll see we are a very human capital heavy business. And then a snapshot of revenues versus expenditures. We're at $335.9 million versus $336.3 million. So we have about a $350,000 deficit at this point in time. So I'll move on to debt service. You'll see on the left is the same calculation, just using a different tax rate that I used. In this example, we use the INS rate. We're proposing, actually I'm we're not proposing yet, we're analyzing this at the same 35-cent rate that we have the current year. That'll generate about $63.7 million in property taxes at a 98.5% collection rate. We have revenue sources for the debt service fund of $75.9 million, which includes the $63.7 million in taxes plus $550,000 in delinquent taxes and penalties and interest. And then we have a budget for accrued, capitalized, and investment interest of about $10.5 million, and then state aid hold harmless money of $1,180,964. You'll see on the expenditure side of this budget, our principal and interest is $75.845 million this year, and then we're budgeting $85,000 for paying agent fees and other fees in the debt service fund. As I mentioned, we're holding a flat 35-cent tax rate, but as we get additional property value information in, we may have to adjust that. And then you'll also remember we have a refunding that's in progress right now. Pricing is set for tomorrow, actually, on that refunding deal. In looking at the tax rate, you'll remember it's a two-part tax rate, M&O plus INS. This year we're at $1.32 with 97 cents M&O and 35 cents for interest and sinking. We're looking at 1.2992, or right at $1.30 for next year. M&O would be right at 95 cents and interest and sinking at 35 cents. What we'll have to do in August is we'll have to publish a voter approval rate, which is formerly the rollback rate. We'll call the regular meeting in early August for the board to vote on a date to discuss the proposed tax rate and our budget. So there's nothing new there, really. And then I'll move to child nutrition. Child nutrition is a self-sustaining budget or self-supporting budget. We're projecting $16.67 million for 2021. The revenues are generated from breakfast and lunch sales and also federal reimbursements. Expenditures are salaries, food costs, supplies, and capital outlay. Just a snapshot of the expenditure categories. Again, supplies, payroll, and benefits costs are the bulk of that budget. So payroll and benefits are at $7.4 million. And supplies and materials right at $8.9 million. And that concludes my budget presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
Looks like you're a little bit better than you were last year at this time.
So far, so good.
Yeah, that's exciting. I was scared to turn the page.
Were you holding your breath?
That was good news. I'm like, oh.
We're going to hold our breath until that compressed rate, the MCR, comes in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You said August?
I think
First
it's
week of
August.
August?
I think it's August 5th.
Okay.
But
And I think
yeah,
we
I
need
did say
August
first
7th.
week of
Okay,
August.
all right. So we can be happy at least until then.
Yeah. Have y'all received any type of aid from the federal government or toward your salaries or?
We've not received it yet, but we know what the process is right now. There are a couple, the large source of funding is going to be, they're both from the CARES Act,
Right.
but one is called ESSER, E-S-S-E-R, and it's passed through, of course, from federal. And the problem with it is it's about $3.44 million, but the state is going to reduce our state aid that's reported in the general fund by the same amount as what we're getting. So what we're going to have to do before the end of the year is report the money in a different fund, Fund 266, and we're going to have to move expenses over there but it should all happen in the 1920 year. Even though they've told us how much we're eligible for, we still have to apply. And so it still has to go through all the different channels. We'll receive a NOGA, and there's a whole lot of hoops to jump through.
Right, right,
But-
a lot of paperwork.
And then the other piece, there are actually a couple other places we'll be applying for money from. There's another CARES Act. It's coronavirus relief fund, so CRF money. We're in the process of doing an application for that right now. We'll be able to submit costs like for graduation, for PPE. Gosh, there's a whole, some of our food costs. There's a whole bunch of things that we can put together, and it's also in coordination with the county.
Okay.
I don't think we'll generate more than maybe $500,000 on that. I'm not sure. The school districts really didn't get a whole lot of that whole pie.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yes.
Not much help.
Right.
Okay.
And then, of course, we'll have FEMA that we can also go to for a little bit of assistance.
How about the special ed programs? Are they?
I'm not aware of strictly special ed programs.
Okay. Income or
I mean,
loss of income?
some of these costs will be special ed costs, but they'll go through the other grant
Federal,
programs.
Okay. Then I had a question here on your loss of income on your rentals. And the rentals will go back into effect for the churches and what other kind of groups?
Yes, we have churches, we have like community groups that rent facilities. We have a whole lot of different entities that rent our buildings, and we are going to see losses this year, but we're hoping to bounce back from that. We're also implementing a new software system that should help us process those more efficiently and also do collections more efficiently.
Do our contracts with the churches, for instance, allow them to not pay if they're not able to occupy the building?
They pay based on use. Correct, Kevin? Yes.
And if we let them start using again or not?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
Are they in?
Yes.
Start of this June first.
Is that
was
with
it,
the,
June
with the
14th.
COVID?
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question, somewhere else down the line,
Yeah.
if we were able to start letting them.
They have to follow the guidelines
guidelines?
set by CDC in the state of Texas on the social distancing and the 50% and things like that, yes.
That's part of the rental process now. We added that step that is on the renter to make sure they comply.
And before that, we were always cleaning the buildings after them with the same process we're still doing, or did we have to add an extra fee for that now with COVID?
It's basically still the same process.
Okay.
I like that provision that we give the breaks to the religious community and they're not able to. But, so we're gonna go, do I understand we're gonna go from our current budget of $318 million to $336 million?
Correct.
And 80% of that is gonna be eaten up in salary.
Yes.
Is that, do I understand that right?
Yes.
It was 84.
84% of our total budget is
84%.
attributable to salaries and benefits.
So,
So 49 million is benefits, the rest is salaries.
so with the upcoming bond, what's that gonna do to the total rate per $100 value?
There's
It's a big one they're gonna propose, from what I understand.
Right, there are a lot of moving parts with the bond. We expect that there's still about, depending on value growth, there's still could be 3 cents that we need to levy for what's already outstanding. But the way values are growing, and for this year, an example, we have other funding sources, and we've been able to keep the rate flat. We've been able to do that for many, many years, so we're hoping that we're going to continue to do that. Right now, we're modeling, for the new bond election, we're modeling a 6.5% growth rate. in values. We're looking at refunding some of the bonds to try to save there. We're going to continue to use interest earnings to offset some of the bond costs. And depending on how much they actually present to you all, and then you all ultimately approve, at that point, we determine how much and when we sell the bonds, because the bond election is just an authorization to sell bonds. For instance, if there's a downturn in the economy or something, we wouldn't sell the bonds, so of course then we wouldn't have the related debt service. So again, the important part is it's an authorization, and we've never sold all the bonds at once. We sell them when we're ready to build the projects.
If the economy collapses, which is possible with all the unemployment, and we're on the 3-year bond cycle, is there any possibility that would push that to a 4-year cycle? It's kind of a big picture question, but.
It could, and it has. It has. We have gone more than 3 years without an election. But again, it all depends on when you sell the bonds you're authorized to sell. Because you could be authorized to sell $800 million, but not need but $200 million for the next 2 years or 3 years, and then you just sell the 200. And of course, that's how you keep your tax rate from growing too fast as well.
You've always done a 2 package deal, and you
We've
could always do the 3 if you had to.
Well, it depends on how big the authorization is and how many projects we have and the construction schedule, Right now we're thinking that if it is a large bond election that's proposed and ends up going to the voters, we might have 3 or 4 sales out of this one. So it's going to get stretched out so that we don't, have that big bubble in the tax rate.
So we get what we need without tax.
And if values grow,
harshness on our.
Yeah, and we're hoping we're going to have the same experience we've had in the last, 10 or more years. We haven't really had to raise the rate at all. If our values grow really fast, then we're hoping to have that same experience.
Thank you.
I do have some questions if nobody else has any. What does the budget development process look like on a campus level? So you mentioned that there's these basic allotments for the students at different levels. Do the principals get that amount and then set the budget themselves?
Yes. Not themselves, it's them and their campus team. Yeah, it's the site-based decision-making team.
Okay, so is there any input or training or anything with the district, or they have complete authority to set their own budget?
They have authority to designate how the budget is set, but yes, we do have various different ways we train. We've done online training, we've done in-person training, we've done one-on-one for new principals and various things like that.
So when the board discusses the district's budget in August and sets a tax rate and does all of that, at what point in the process does the campus determine what their budget's going to look like? Or are they doing that while we're doing this and using your same models?
They actually, like in February, they get their amounts for the next year. So they input all of that, and that's how we develop the budget. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. So when we're looking at the budget in August, and we usually look at just those big buckets, right? The ones I think that are on.
Their budgets are within all of these numbers.
But we get, we vote on the big buckets that are on page 9, the expenditure summary, that's what we vote on generally, and then also the tax rate. But at that point in August, there will also be a draft model budget for each of the campuses, right? So like if we approve this budget, then they're ready to rock and roll with their budget.
Right, because their budget is part of this. For instance, if you're looking at the expenditure summary with the $336 million, the supplies and materials budget for $16 million includes all the campus budgets as well. And once they submit their budgets to us and we do our reconciliations and stuff, we don't change their numbers. anymore without their input. Sometimes they call and they say, you know, I've put money in supplies, but I really need it in contracted services because I want to do some training. So then we'll move it for them.
So are they locked in February? Their budget's locked?
The total is, yes, the total is. We do, one thing that we're gonna do this year, I think the date I have on my calendar is sometime in July. We're gonna look and see if their enrollment has changed, and then potentially give them more money or adjust their allocation based on enrollment projections.
So that's when they get the number that's going to be their allocation, but when does the district get wind of what their particular budget is? This is how much I'm spending on supplies.
We can generate budget to actual cost reports at any time. So can they. It's all through.
When they submitted their budgets, that's what their budgets are, and that's a part of this. They've already, the campuses already have submitted, they know what they submitted for the next year. So when you approve this budget, you are approving what they submitted.
Yes.
Because it is a part of this. The only time that there are any changes to it is that if they have an enrollment growth of 100 kids that weren't expected, then they go back in and they make the adjustment per pupil allocation at that point to add money for the additional 100 kids.
And we actually have a formal process of doing that again mid-year. So once you adopt this budget in August, we look at it again after the fall snapshot. So next fall, when we do the snapshot enrollment, we'll have new numbers, and some schools will get additional money then.
So the site-based teams and the principal, they're the ones that are determining, if say there's a certain position that's on a campus and that person leaves for whatever reason, and they decide, we don't want to backfill this position, they're the ones that are making that decision?
The salary budget and so the positions are handled centrally. The Human Resources Department, and Kathleen, it's your turn. They work with the campus principals and administrators, and sometimes do make adjustments to staffing.
So the way allocations work is each campus, based on their enrollment and their needs, gets an allocated number of units. And if they have a position, let's say that they, and every unit has a weighted value, with the teacher being 1. Their weighted value is 1, and then some positions are weighted at a half. It's a full-time person, but it's just the weight of the position. And so if they say, I want to take this 1 unit, and they don't really have the need for it anymore, but my numbers still qualify for it, and I want to trade it in for this unit instead, we allow them to do that. So they have flexibility with their units, but they do have some constraints. Elementary has to do the 22-to-1 at K to 4, and they have to have their course offerings at secondary. But they have a lot of flexibility with their staffing units.
So they would just need to, they would work with you on what their requests are and then work through central administration.
Correct.
So I know that, like I said, we usually focus on these buckets here, but since those school-based budgets are already produced by the time that we look at the budgets, is it possible for us, just so we can see on a school campus-based level what the budgets are? Could we, and I realize that I'm asking probably for another binder that will sit on my shelf.
No, not really. We can just sort it by location.
Okay. I think that would be helpful, just so we kind of see what the budgets look like from campus to campus.
And again, they get their per pupil allocation, and they only budget for object codes 6200 to 66. So they do contracted services, supplies, other costs, and capital outlay.
And if you have new principals that are coming in that have not been on a campus.
Oh, an extra duty, yeah.
They're coming in after February, a new principal, do they get to make any changes, or, because some of those had already been set by February?
Right, we've had that situation, and we do. Yvonne, do you want to speak to that? She actually deals with the principals in that situation if someone new is there.
I actually have a meeting set with Sandra, the new principal, on Thursday, and I will be reaching out to the Meyer principal as well.
Because they might have different needs or wants.
Right, different direction.
So if those school-based budgets, would those reflect, say, sometimes I hear teachers having difficulty getting paper and consumable items and things like that. That is a site-based decision in their budget, and that would be reflected in the budget that you could question, but it was about, I know that HB3, when we discussed that many months ago now, before COVID, and there was a whole bunch of additional money that was available for things like mentor programs and things like that. We were waiting for TEA to release some guidance on that. Did that kind of stop during COVID, or, and I know that there was some money associated with that too from the state. So what's the status of that?
I can tell you that at this time, we're not, when we look at the mentoring program, many of the districts are actually in this area are pulling back from even going forward with the mentoring because there's so many different hoops and barriers towards that money. And so the teacher allotment grant, we've had to push back to another, or the teacher incentive, I think is the grant piece. We weren't looking based upon where we are because there's a certain areas where you have to kind of show growth and teacher growth, have a system to be able to do that. There's a whole lot of different things that have to be in place with the teacher incentive allotment. And we're not in a place to be able to do that. I think we pushed it one more year. It's in 3 to 4 years from now to where we would access that or be able to access that or have a plan to access that at this time.
I know there was money for like a master teacher program too. Is that what you were talking about, or is that something
That's
else?
connected.
Yes.
It's all connected. So it's something that we'll revisit.
It could be something we revisit, and we also know that we have the January session that opens up from the state's aspect. And so with different legislation, things could pivot, and at each legislative session, we're going to pivot accordingly. And so as we continue to get more information about the money that they have allocated to the HB3, we're definitely going to react to that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, does the board have any questions regarding tax collection report?
Everyone will take it?
Payments for construction projects? Bond update 2014, 2017. School Resource Division update, that's on page 236. Transportation update,
Not in school, there's not a report.
and Mr. Rockwood is, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I
Back
had a
to-
question on the transportation update, and it was related to a question that Mr. Welch had, and I believe he was talking to Mr. Dungy about, do we have like a minimum amount of like gasoline that we need to use?
Yes.
Have we gotten there?
Yes, we've hit our allotment, our quota, so
we're not
our
opening
contract
the
is
pumps to the
fulfilled.
public.
I'm sorry?
We're not opening the pumps to the public.
Sorry, no drive-through fill-ups for public.
You can't pull out
It'll
of
be a
your
free-for-all.
Suburban.
Come on and fill it.
Checking.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're good.
Thank you.
And Dr. Rockwood is going to give you a real quick, brief update on COVID-19.
Yes, sir. Everyone received our June COVID-19 update in your board packet. There's also a copy at your desk right now, but just real quick, if you were to glance through that, we've had a lot of overall response over the past 3 months in Lamar CISD. Fortunately, all of our campuses completed their closeout procedures. We are moving forward with our virtual summer school plans, our virtual courses. Obviously, summer meal programs are continuing in Lamar CISD. And we also have some other summer programs that will continue virtually and as possible. Under the academic section on page 3, I talked about the end-of-year closeout process at all of our campuses. We were able to also have those drive-through celebrations for our 5th graders or for our seniors, which were very well attended. I talked about summer school being virtually. Also, academics moved all of our summer PD online, creating 348 virtual courses for staff during the summer, and you're all aware of the upcoming 5 graduation dates that have moved in person outside at Legacy Field coming up. And so far, students accessing Canvas during our COVID-19 closure, 34,188. On the next page, under Administrative Services, we're aware that our Citizens Bond Committee process continued over the previous months online, and we actually launched our Randall Wright Attendance Boundary Committee process in person via social distancing last night at George Ranch High School, so that process is underway. We do have a district transition team, which has been mentioned, made up of 31 employees, both from the campus level and from the district level, from both instructional and non-instructional departments, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Last week, we entered phase 1 of our employee reentry plan at Brazos Crossing and other facilities that are still operating over the summer. Some of the things that we had were an electronic pre-screening form for all staff before they came back to work, answering different questions to make sure that it was safe for them. You might have seen, if you had the chance to walk around, the directional hallways that have been implemented in Lamar CISD to encourage social distancing. We have sanitation or sanitizing stations at different areas at the main entrances, and we are encouraging social distancing, and all of our meetings currently are still online. We have a limit right now, 50% capacity in terms of our employees in the facility, but we aren't getting really near that so far over the last 2 weeks. A lot of folks are still able to work virtually at home. On page 5 for human resources, you will see that HR is working to ensure the district remains in compliance with the rules and regulations of keeping our employees safe. They did host their first job fair, which we mentioned last month, with 522 virtual participants. And since that job fair, they've been processing recommendations to hire and offering employment. And to date, 110 teachers have accepted a position with Lamar CISD. They're working on a virtual onboarding process, which was developed for new hires to give them the information they need coming on board to Lamar CISD. And another virtual job fair is set coming up on June 24th. On the next page, on page 6, a quick overview of finance and what's been occurring in Lamar CISD. During modified business operations before phase 1 reentry process, payments totaled roughly $49.3 million to ensure that bond construction projects continued on schedule and our utilities and our trusted vendors were paid on time. Accounts payable also issued 2,086 checks, while on modified business operations, paying approximately 6,000 invoices. In support services, the help desk has been staffed well since March. We also talked about a student help desk, which was also launched last month as well. Since its implementation, the student help desk has fielded approximately 750 calls, and the laptop swap depot has replaced 85 laptops. Child Nutrition continues to do its work over the summer, which we referenced. They are providing meals 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and they do double up on Thursdays for students who arrive or children who arrive as well. We continue to clean with our EMIS process, which is the hospital-grade disinfectant at our campuses, and we are finalizing, we have finalized our plans for facility rentals. Mr. McKeever and Mr. Junty talked about on the 14th. We have opened up facility rentals for churches and also for outside unfenced areas in Lamar CISD. And total meals so far served during COVID-19 are currently at 156,069. So that work continues, and we appreciate their efforts. On the back, it has the information that we have in place in terms of COVID-19 frequently asked questions. Those are in place for summer school, student mental health resources, internet safety tips. All of those items are still available for our public to go online and check those things out. I did talk about the transition team for Lamar CISD, and what that is, it's a 31-member team in Lamar CISD. Again, it has campus representation, it has department representation, literally from every department, every support service area, technology, finance, HR, who might be involved. We are looking at different options for the upcoming 2021 school year in terms of an instructional framework. We have been discussing traditional, hybrid, and virtual models for fall with what things might look like. We were expecting an update from the state today, but that has been punted, and it will be likely next Tuesday. We did hear from both the governor today and TEA Commissioner Mike Morath. Some things they talked about were, again, expecting guidance on reopening schools next week. They're not ready to go over at this time ADA or any of the public health requirements in terms of the distancing. Next Tuesday, input from the state is expected. The commissioner did indicate some flexibility on class sizes and that PPE would not likely be required from the state level. And then transportation direction and recommendations are also expected from the state next week. So as we await for some additional feedback from the state, some things that the transition team has worked on and gotten feedback on were 2 surveys, and we have these documents at your tables respectively, but we have a parent survey and we have a teacher survey, and it goes over some different things. The things that we talked about, and we've gotten input from our peers, is that some districts have had really lengthy surveys, some districts have had brief surveys, but the main thing is that we want to make sure that we have some actionable data based upon what the state tells us in the very near future. And we feel like the questions that are outlined here will allow parents to give some feedback, and no matter what the state decides to do or how they might pivot even after their initial information next week and in the coming weeks, we have information about what parents are comfortable with, what they plan to do in terms of transportation, or what their home might look like, if we made any major adjustments, what it could look like for childcare. And we're also offering them an opportunity to have open-ended feedback to the district about what they would like to see, which we'd also look at. And so we have a parent survey here and a teacher survey. Teacher survey is very similar, checks their comfort levels for coming back to school. If we have virtual, online, in-person models, if teachers are interested in doing one or the other or both, and they also have some open-ended opportunities to share their feedback. And so as of now, the district's plan was to launch both of these surveys tomorrow to our parents and to our teachers. Pretty straightforward if you look through it and get that feedback, and then we'd have some flexibility again with the state moving forward with what guidance they have for us. So that's somewhat brief overview of COVID-19, Dr. Randall, but I'll pause for questions.
How is it going with the sports, with the students coming back and doing? I know they've been. Are they doing it at all the high schools?
So yes, we've got. I can't speak too much. I know that Ms. Nelson, our athletic director, has put together some really good information. The UIL and the state actually put some new information out, but I know that during these first 2 weeks they were really working on their practices and making sure that things were in place, and they're going to relook at expanding some of those different things. But by all accounts, yes, our athletics have been working, and it looks like Terry might have something to add.
Nikki's actually coming down to provide you kind of a response to that as well, but it is going well. And then we also opened up performing visual arts yesterday as well, according to the UIL guidelines, and both are framed in the same manner with the processes and procedures, both athletics and PVA.
Yeah, but the athletics is all outdoors, correct?
Yes.
That's okay. Are they all home? I guess while she's coming down, my other question was, the first week of being off in 4 days, did we have still a good response picking up lunches as we did over? Oh.
We've got the experts both here. So Nikki, you can come up real quick and answer just a quick overview on how things are going with summer workouts.
So far, so good. I'm happy to report, you may have seen some news articles. We've had a few districts around us, Sealy being the closest, that has suspended their activities at this point due to some students who participated with positive tests, but we have not had any as of today. So our pre-screening process is working, or at least it has until today. So I hope I didn't just change that. But we are participating at all 5 high schools Monday through Thursday in any sport that a coach was interested in participating. It's totally voluntary. We're still providing at-home workouts for any athlete that's interested. And we have some athletes that are coming regularly. We have some that are coming some days of the week. We have some that can come certain days and not others. But they are, like I said, totally voluntary. Most of them are football. We've got most of our fall sports are active: football, volleyball, and basketball. We've got tennis participating. We will start swimming next Monday here at just the LCISD natatorium. We're following the UIL's guidelines that were put out, and then we've got them working in very small groups right now, and we're not cross-contaminating our groups at all. So they're in groups of 15 for our outdoor sports and groups of 10 for our indoor sports. And they stay with that same group both for the strength and conditioning part as well as the sport specific part. So that if we were to have a contagion, it would stay within that same small group of students.
Is there an amount of students that can participate each day, or as many?
Yes, ma'am. So we take 4 groups of 15, 60 students per session outdoors, and 3 groups of 10, 30 indoors at a time. And that actually is limited by the potential for lightning or our heat policy to take effect, because at any moment we may have to move them all inside, and we felt we could move 100 students inside and still keep them apart between the cafeteria, the hallways, and the 2 gyms. So the real limiting factor is if we had to move all the students inside at the same time, where could we fit them and still have enough room to keep them safe? And so we're building them into our sessions, and we've got half an hour between sessions so that we can do the proper disinfectant and sanitizing between each session. We've got anywhere from 3 to 4 sessions per campus.
Are y'all, I'm assuming y'all are doing the temperature, all that?
Yes.
And do the parents sign off, a waiver or anything?
We have not previously
Done that
done a waiver if they've signed up for summer strength and conditioning. But we are at this point, because it's an LCISD athletic activity, they have to be cleared in rank 1 with a physical, just like they do to participate in athletics. The one change we've made this year that's different than what we've done in the past is we're not charging a participation fee, and we're not paying our coaches. And part of that had to do with the fact that the fear was that if all of a sudden we had a situation where we had to send a group home for 14 days, but a parent had paid for their child to participate, how would we refund them that money? And so at this point, the coaches are doing it in an effort to help our students. And so that way we could also offer it to any student who is interested.
I have a question then. So was it voluntary for the coaches then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're all volunteering their time. We understand about that. That's very nice. I have a question about the UIL. So what is the relationship, how does it work with the TEA, and then you have the governor's orders, and then you have UIL and CDC, I mean, all these different organizations. Where does UIL get their, we have to abide by UIL rules, even if if we go back in the fall, we're not required to do PPE or anything, but UIL says we want you to do, who's the governing voice there?
So UIL will follow TEA. TEA would trump UIL.
Okay.
So if TEA were to tell us these are the guidelines for, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Dr. Randall, but if TEA were to say this is what we are putting for, if the governor gives an order, TEA will follow those orders, UIL will follow the orders of TEA.
Okay.
I like these masks, I can laugh.
Right?
That is correct. There
Good job.
are the guidelines that UIL establishes. Once they establish them, they still have to go to TEA for approval. So it's a separate entity governed by a legislative council that ultimately makes the recommendations, but even after they make the recommendations, they get it approved. So when the governor says whatever, then the commissioner is involved, and then of course UIL follows along.
Got it, okay.
How does CDC come into this?
There's always communication going with CDC, with UIL, and not only that, UIL has some medical advisors that also provide information for making decisions.
So I have a question on the surveys.
Thank you, Ms. Nutt.
Did we want to get Ms. Tomas?
Yes.
Oh,
Let's finish that
sorry.
piece.
Yeah, she's right there.
No, not.
Monica.
Sorry, Ms.
She's had a quick question on how things are going with the summer meals.
With the.
Switching to Monday through Thursday. Actually, Thursday was our busiest day this past week. So usually on Mondays it's a little bit slower. And then as the week progresses, we do more meals. So right now, currently we're ranging anywhere between 1,400 and 1,600 meals a day.
Wow.
And we were at the height of the closure at about 3,600
Right.
meals a day. So we've seen as parents have gone back to work, we saw
And lunch
some decrease.
still handing out meals, so. Wow, okay, good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just so I can understand, because I've received communications from the public, and I assume many of us all have, Lamar CISD is waiting on the governor to speak about the fall, is that correct? The governor of Texas about how we go back to school. Are we waiting for either him to tell us how we go back to school, or he's gonna leave it to the individual districts?
No, I think that's a good point. So what all the school districts in Texas are waiting on are some strict guidance from the governor and the commissioner of education, Mike Morath. And so what a lot of school districts are doing right now, some of them more or less publicly in different ways, are having think tanks, committees, teams, working groups, trying to think through all the different things that might be in place. And so in Lamar CISD with our transition team, we're having conversations about what things might look like if they're exactly the way they currently are, if things are more traditional how they should be, if we get any guidance in between. And so instead of waiting for that to come out, we're having the conversations right now. But we know that just like every other school district in Texas, similar to the example between the state and the TEA and UIL, when the state or the commissioner of education says this is what the guidelines will be, then you'll see a lot of the school districts make some adjustments at that point.
So we're gonna use the information we received from the surveys to do what exactly?
So I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to get feedback from our parents. And so some of the questions here would be, if conditions in the fall are the same as today, how comfortable are you sending your child back to school? Very uncomfortable, somewhat comfortable, very comfortable. We're trying to get a feel for our parents, because if we create, say, based upon TEA guidance, a 100% virtual option or a traditional option or a hybrid of both, we also then have to figure out within the next 2 months with our staff, we don't have 1 week this time, we have 2 months, but how do we implement different strategies to make sure that our educational models are effective for our kids? And so you see a lot of districts talking about, are we looking at something completely online, something that looks just like education last fall and the beginning of spring, something that might look like both. And what we're getting with these questions is we feel like information that regardless of what guidance we get from the state, there's still information here about the feelings and attitudes of parents in terms of how we can take that information, take what the state gives us, and then move forward effectively.
Because what if you get a...
I do, but I'll wait, go ahead.
Go ahead. I know this takes a lot of time to do these surveys, but I'm when I was looking at this, I go, it's obvious. I could tell. Maybe it's just because I see a lot of parents. Is there any way that you can give a description when you're saying hybrid or you're saying virtual? Parents are saying, and I hear a lot of the 3-2. Is there some information that we can just give them an understanding of what all they are, so they know, okay, if they go to hybrid, I need to be prepared like this. If they go to virtual, I need to be prepared for this. I think right now they're just sitting back there and they're saying, we can't wait till the last minute to not know what type of programs are considered.
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot of different feedback from our peers, other school districts around specificity. And I think, again, not having the specific guidance from the state about what next fall will look like, when you start to be very specific in an alternating A-B schedule and things like that, people start to think that's exactly what you're going to do. Whereas if we start to get more generic input, whereas if there were an online model, would you choose that over a traditional? Or if we reduce the number of school days in the week, would you have childcare issues? Trying to figure out what some parents would prefer without putting something out there. Because if you say exactly what a hybrid model would entail or what an A-B alternating model might entail right now, parents start to get fixated on that, and then we get different guidance from the state, and then we're trying to backtrack and make adjustments. And so I think for us, it's really been, we want to be thoughtful around the information we put out to our parents, but we also realize that their input is important. But we are going to get guidance from the state on exactly what we can and can't do in the very near future.
Okay, I feel for the parents, because this last minute, it's causing a lot of anxiety, and I thought maybe if they would understand the 3 options, so they'd have some idea of what to be prepared for, knowing that we haven't made the decision. But, I mean, there's not 6 options, there's not 10 options, basically, we're talking 3 or 4.
And I think one thing we all need to be careful or be aware of is that I think everyone's options are going to change. And I think you hear a lot of different things, and people are being creative, we're being innovative. We're not trying to wait until the last minute to make a decision. But I think even the options that are floated from other districts right now, you're seeing people take the best options from different ones. And when we get this feedback from the governor and from the commissioner of TEA, that's when you can focus and let parents know, okay, we've got guidance on this, we've gotten some input from you, this is what it looks like. And there might be opportunities again to come back to our parents with that specificity. But we know that we're in a position where we don't want to sit on our hands and wait until August to do anything. But we're also in a position where we're beholden to the state and what direction we're getting. And we were expecting some information today, but that's now next week. But we don't want to wait too long to get some feedback from our parents about some different things. But we also don't want to ask them about very specific models, and then in a week or two that looks very different based upon guidance from the state.
One example is that initially there was some communication to us that we were going to have to restrict classrooms to 11.
Yeah.
That's up to 22 now.
Right.
So see, as soon as we roll out, we're going to do something with 11, and then it comes out that it's 22, and we're having to take and change, and you got parents saying, make up your mind. And so what we've tried to do is to be very thoughtful in just making sure that what we roll out, it is, number one, something that the district can deliver. Because if we put something out there that we cannot deliver, then our parents are going to be concerned about that as well. And so that's one of the reasons why we've tried to allow the system time to, and I actually do believe that we're in much better shape now than we were in March, when all of a sudden we had to take and pivot. So I really and truly do believe that just like our parents are questioning, the state is also getting that, and that's why I really do believe that next week we're going to get some guidance. And I actually believe they're going to give us some flexibility that I think will work in our favor.
I think one other quick note, we also wanted to leave that open-ended option on both surveys for our parents and for our teachers to share their thoughts. And so while I know that they want some specificity, we want some specificity from the state, but we're all dealing with the unique circumstances by saying, what can the district do to make you feel more comfortable with reopening? And is there anything else you would like to add? It also gives us the option to let our parents say, you know, I've seen this, I've seen that, here's what I think, are you guys looking at that? And then when we can align on their input, the input from the state, we can put it all together.
I'll just make one real quick comment. I had a parent coming in from out of state and was asking me these questions just a few days ago, only to realize that the state she was coming from had exactly the same ideals and the same concerns over the education. And I thought, okay, it's not just us, and I tend to think about it's just Texas.
Mm-hmm.
But to remind parents, this is all over the states. It's not just here.
Yes,
That might help.
Real quick, because I've been fielding phone calls the past 2 weeks, are we changing the calendar?
Yeah.
I've been getting that question a lot. I keep telling them, not to my knowledge, because it has to come to the board.
And
So-
that's the correct answer. I think
That's what
we've
I've been
learned to
saying.
bring calendars to the school board, but also if there's any adjustment to minutes or those kind of things. But I think what we want to make sure that the board knows is that with our transition team and with our staff, we're all looking at what's going on. We're having conversations. We're being ready to pounce, so to speak, when we get that directive and direction from the state. We don't want to wait for it and then try to figure it out from square one. And so there are a lot of options on the table. But as soon as we get that guidance, you're going to see a lot of districts focusing very quickly on things, and we will be sure to keep the board involved. And if we have to make an adjustment to anything, whether it's the calendar or the minutes, you all will be the first to know.
And without a doubt, because we may have to have a special board meeting
Right.
once we have the information that we would like to push out, so that the board would then give us direction as to whether or not that's okay.
And
That would be in July.
Yes.
The other concern, these were from teachers that I know, their concern is going back to work. Even if we went to regular, what do we do with the child that comes in and is sick and the parents don't pick them up? Because that happens in a lot of the, especially elementary. So those are things, I know there's no answers to that right now, but those are things you have to think about. Do
Absolutely.
we have a tent outside each school? That, because you know parents send them to school with their Motrin at 7 a.m. and then by 10 a.m. the fever goes back up. So those are just things that I've been getting questions of, that teachers are concerned about sick kids in their classroom.
Absolutely, and you're right, at this point, there's not a specific answer to that scenario, but on our transition team, we have our lead nurse who's involved in sharing health information and different options, and just like you've got your HR group, your finance group, your communications group, all these folks, superintendent group, Region 4, we're all having conversations among one another, and so, yes, once we get that direction, there'll be a lot of focused energy on the health and safety aspect, social distancing, what requirements are in place when school reopens for the fall. Yes, sir.
So I'm glad to hear that. It looks like things are maybe going to start to come into focus next week. And I think it might be helpful if we just continue to get updates on like what's happening with the task force and the governor's office and the TEA and all that, because we do get those phone calls from parents and constituents, and sometimes it's hard for us to field those calls. And a lot of times folks, when they don't hear any information, they think, are they doing anything? And so if we're getting that information, now there's a task force of 31 people and we're waiting on the governor, and it's supposed to come next week, we can help communicate that to the public and say, well, the reason that you haven't heard anything yet is that we don't want to jump the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can expect something in mid-June, and that, I think, would help put a lot of people at ease. So, and we have been getting that communication here lately, and that's been.
And to your point, Mr. Hunt, we are planning on putting, whenever we launch the survey, there's an associated component of a little bit of information with what the district is doing right now and why we're wanting your feedback and what things are going to look like. Heading into today, we were expecting some updated information from the state, and the survey would be available for the board to review. And so it is a good point, and we are going to share out with our parents and our staff when these surveys go out what that transition team looks like, why we're asking for feedback, what input looks like from the state, and so that they're all on the same page.
So a couple different comments. First, on the survey, I think it might be difficult for some parents and for some teachers to be able to answer some of the questions. And so some of it needs to be taken with a grain of salt because, like, for example, the question, if conditions in the fall are the same as they are today, how comfortable are you sending your child back to school? That question is conditional on, well, what are the safeguards that the school is going to be? Is it going to be like everything is normal?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I would be less comfortable with that. Are there going to be 11 students? Are there going to be 22 students? Are we doing an A-B schedule? So that question is probably going to be answered by parents in different ways if they don't have that information yet, which, if we don't have the governor's information, we can't necessarily do anything about that. But I wanted to see if on the governor's call and on the TEA call, if you got the impression that it's going to be a mandate from the governor and the TEA of this is how you have to reopen schools, or if it's going to be a set of basically minimum standards of, say you can have 22 students in a class, but you could also have less than that. You don't have to have PPE, but you can require PPE if you want to.
Right, and my understanding is that there's going to be some individual flexibilities, but there will be some guidelines or some standards in place. And all of that information, again, is next week. I didn't know if you got a different perspective, Dr. Randall.
It was, the governor's comments today actually came in the form of a question that he was asked regarding school for this next year. And his response was that we would be getting information either by the end of this week or next week. And then the commissioner came right behind him and said that they were hoping they would have the information specifically dealing with the health issues and those types of things and what requirements would be this week. But instead, they feel very comfortable that we'll get it the first part of next week. I think that they're going to give us some guidelines to operate from. And then we as a district can make some determinations about. The one thing that he was very clear on was that they're not going to require kids to have PPE. That he was clear on that right up front. And so I think we'll get those types of parameters, so to speak, for when they come out with those this next week.
My last question was on online learning, and so we keep hearing about how there might be a second wave. And in March, this kind of took us by surprise, right? And all of a sudden, we had to shut down schools, and we had to start online learning. And I think the teachers and the parents and the students, everybody showed each other a lot of grace with that because it was new for everybody. But if there's a second wave, I don't think that there's going to be as much grace given because it's like this is the second time that we've done it. So are there conversations where if that happens, it's like we're learning from, we're improving, we're following best practices from what happened in the fall or from the spring, and we're going to do it.
I'll let Dr. Mossage answer that, but I would say without a doubt, we know just pivoting like that in March and implementing it remote instruction and working remotely, I think that we're ready to do things much better, even as of today, but I'll let Dr. Mossage touch on that.
Our team is currently working on that. We've already revised our scope and sequence to go into next year to look at some key learnings from this past year and the COVID time to make the necessary adjustments going forward, even in our reentry plan, whether or not that's virtual or face-to-face, as far as training with teachers. Canvas and best practices for online learning is going to be a portion of that. And so we are actively looking at that because we know that any way we go, we're going to have to be able to pivot really quickly. And the model in which we utilize is going to have a lot more opportunities for direct teach, particularly at the elementary level. And then there are some tools that we're going to be able to use at the secondary level through Edgenuity. And so we're vetting all of that information currently right now throughout our team. Our curriculum coordinators are working on that. It will look very different, still showing grace and support as we help our parents and our kids navigate this time period, but it will be a little bit more, way more structured as we go into next year.
I have one more question about, you mentioned elementary. What are the plans for introducing to the children? It's going to be more than just academic. So are y'all talking to your teachers or giving them any kind of training about how to be there for those kids that are going to be a behavioral issue?
Oh, absolutely.
Will there be extra people out on the campuses, counselors and that to help for those first few weeks?
We normally have, as far as that reentry to begin at the school level, we have staff that go out and support that first week as far as the beginning days of school. But in our student services department, we're well aware of the different supports and what kids are going to be bringing, because of this time of uncertainty has provided a lot of anxiety for all of our kids in the K through 12 level. And so, again, the work of Dr. Roberts, oh, absolutely, absolutely, because we know we need to have an academic response, but there's also the social emotional response that's very important to us moving forward.
Anybody else? Okay, I had a question. I was just waiting. Sorry. So that kind of leads into what Ms. Kaminsky was saying. There's not and I don't know if there's a good way to phrase this on here, but I was thinking if there was a mental health question on the survey, do you feel like it was, how did the mental health of your student hold up during the time? Something to that effect maybe, and I don't know if there's a good way to phrase that, but I think I've heard from different people that they felt like,
You have a concern about.
something, how it's, so I've heard that some of there was a decline. So I don't know if there's a good way to add a question like that on there, and y'all might have already nixed that, or
A stress level.
or just something to address that, and that might be more in the open-ended question, but I just thought that might be something good to add.
Yeah, we have had some conversations about mental health questions, both for staff and for parents.
Okay.
And I'll let Dr. Bone touch on that.
Okay. We discussed that at length, and Dr. Rockwood has talked repeatedly about the things that we get to ask a very generic question might not provide us the actionable data that we needed.
Gotcha.
And I think those are the types of things that as we move forward with our staff, we have to be very careful that we remain in the role of employer and not healthcare provider. That is a very fine line. But with students, that is our responsibility. We do have to provide the services that they need, and I think we would then, once we get kids back into a place, whether it be traditional or a hybrid model, that we would then begin assessing what their needs are at that time, whereas a generic question on the survey might not really give us data that we could use to serve them well.
So I guess for me, it would be, if we felt like there was mental health decline because of the online, would that sway us more as an administration on what we propose? You know what I mean? Versus being their mental health provider, do you feel like it's healthier to be in the building? Would that sway our decision as what we offer, I guess?
So if I understand you correctly, Ms. Williams, the question you're saying is, do you think your students' socio-emotional needs were better served in a classroom setting versus an online setting?
As you phrased it very nicely.
That might be a question that we could add, because it would become actionable.
Yes, I think that would be great.
Okay, boy,
If-
I hope you wrote that
I
down.
know, I already don't.
It's on
video.
It's on video, you got it.
Watch the YouTube
It's at
channel.
9:45, just look for 9:45, yes. Okay, that would be, that suggestion.
But that is a good yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And then another thing was, I was just gonna ask, is the board gonna get to see the results of the survey?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And so when we launch and close the survey, we'll get the reports back internally, and we can share those out at that time.
When are you guesstimating?
Well, that's still up in the air. Traditionally, surveys are out anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, and then you have more information coming out next week.
Okay.
But if it launches tomorrow, we would have a plan in place for either 1 or 2 weeks typically for a survey.
Before the holiday?
Mm-hmm.
That's about 2 weeks from now.
Okay, so you're
But yes,
thinking-
when it closes, we can run a report and share it with the board, either via email or the boardogram, or in advance of a special meeting.
Perfect, okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Okay. You'll get the bond, Citizens Bond Advisory Committee presentation on Thursday. Dr. Rockwood, I suppose so.
I wanted the board to be aware of the materials that they have. Dr. Randall is correct. We will have a spokesperson from the Citizens Bond Advisory Committee here on Thursday to speak with the board, but you did get your binders in your board packet last week, which has a lot of the materials that were distributed online, including the chats and other things, just so you can see. Again, it was our first foray into an online process, but the main thing is we wanted to get feedback from our stakeholders, and we move forward with the online process. Additionally, looking at that, if you weren't a part of those committee meetings, you might have had some questions about some of the information, and so there was some documentation in there. There are 2 reports here, one that says all projects at the top, and so that would be every single item the committee looked at, things the committee added, things the district added, how many times they polled it. The second one is the final recommendation, and so what the poll results are, either 1 poll or 2 polls from our committee, and what the total is. Then there's a 1-page overview which shows you exactly what the district started with its needs assessment, what the Citizens Bond Advisory Committee removed, and what it added to get a new total. And then you've got an updated committee recommendation where their items were then placed in the appropriate place, and you see a new grand total as well. And so I just wanted you to know that all of those tools were at your table and available, and if you have any questions in advance of next week, a lot of the information will be there.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we'll adjourn to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney. The time, it is 9:48. Do I need to do it again?
No, you're just fine. We'll ask.
We are now back in open session. It is 10:51. If we have no further business, the meeting is adjourned. It is 10:51.